Hey everyone! Tonight we're diving into the world of medieval Europe, a time so strange and intense that it can really mess with the way you think about the past. Before you settle in, go ahead and hit like and subscribe, but only if you honestly enjoy these kinds of videos. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is for you. I love seeing people join in from all over. So just relax and feel the surroundings as they settle gently around you. Lean back, ease your shoulders, and let your breath slow. Because tonight we go somewhere that smells of oil lamps, warm metal, and dried herbs. Picture a narrow street of cobbles and wooden doors, a small room lit by a single brazier, and a man whose hands know how to cut hair and tend wounds with the same gentle care. The bell above the door gives a soft, familiar jingle as you step inside. A lantern's glow catches the edge of a tiny mirror, polished so often it shines like a moon. Shelves hold jars of rosemary, yarrow, and lavender, simple medicines that smell like summer hay. Razors rest in a neat row, each one cared for as if it were a trusted friend. He is there, an older man with a beard gone silver at the chin and eyes that have learned to listen more than to speak. His hands move with the quiet assurance of someone who has steadied many a trembling limb and soothed many a fevered brow. He smiles when he sees you, the kind of smile that tells you you're safe to stay. "Come sit," he says in a voice low enough to settle a restless mind. "The night stretches long, and we have time." He gestures to a worn wooden stool whose cushion remembers numerous strangers who sat, sighed, and left lighter than they arrived. He takes up a strop and draws a blade across it. The sound, becomes a steady rhythm that eases your heartbeat. You find yourself matching your breathing to it, the scrape of leather and steel tugging your breaths longer, gentler. People assume the razor's only purpose is to shave. In this room, the razor is many things. It smooths faces and performs delicate tasks. It opens abscesses when infection must be drawn out. It trims hair to reduce lice that carry fever. The same hand that lifts the razor for a tidy beard can steady it when a feverish child needs a small incision to be drained, when a farmer's swollen joint requires a poultice and patient hands. He hums as he works, a soft, wordless prayer that seems older than the shop itself. The tune is simple and steady, a lullaby that steadies his hands and smooths the air. He learned that hum as an apprentice and kept it because its rhythm keeps him calm when the room grows tense. Outside, a wind moves through the alleys, making the lamp flames bow and straighten. From a way-off lane comes the faint sound of someone talking and the hollow stride of boots on stone. But inside, the world narrows to the glow of a brazier, to the scent of herbs, to the small, precise motions of a man who has spent his life learning how to mend. He tells you softly that long before there were large institutions for the sick, people leaned on local hands. On barbers who doubled as healers, on neighbors who knew which herb to brew and which wound to clean. This was not the schoolroom knowledge of distant scholars, but the close, careful knowledge passed from elder to apprentice, learned by watching, touching, and repeating until the motions became second nature. He points to a pole tucked against the window, painted in spirals of white and red long ago to signal where one might find help. Folks know that pole means someone here carries the tools of both gentleness and remedy. It is a small sign, but in the hush of the night it says comfort to those who need it. He speaks of the tools, a razor for shaving and for precise cuts, a small cup for bloodletting, used with caution and the belief that it might rebalance a person's inner humors. Heated irons for cautery when a wound will not lay quiet, poultices of bread and honey for a wound that needs cooling and protection. Nothing is fancy. Nothing is glittering like new machinery. The power here comes from steadiness, from patience, from the faith that careful hands and simple remedies can do much. He places a warm, damp cloth on the basin and lifts it again with practiced motions. The steam curls faintly into the lamplight. He checks his instruments, each one placed with respect, and then he looks toward the window. Just a glance, slight and quick. Not much, but enough to tell you that something beyond the peace of this room draws his attention now and then. "Forgive me," he murmurs, smiling to ease any worry. "I have had a visitor this evening, a traveler who spoke of roads and distant things that set my thoughts wandering. He returns to the rhythm of the razor on the strop. But we will sit with what is near now. He leans in, and his hands move like feathers through your hair. Snip, snip. The scissors' small, crisp sounds are like soft rain on canvas. Each cut seems to shave more than hair. It trims away the day's tension, the edges of worry becoming smoother beneath his touch. You may wonder, he says, as if reading a question you have not yet voiced, how a barber comes to set bones or cauterize a wound. His voice is soft, each word deliberate. Apprenticeships teach more than the eye can see in a single lesson. We learn by being present for many small things, by seeing a broken wrist set, then remembering its angle for another day, by watching how a fever responds to cool cloths and clear soups, by listening to the stories that come with each visitor and learning which remedies work when the body rebels. He hums again, a note that weaves into the close air, and as the sound settles you notice the tiny details around you. A jar with dried marigold, stained slightly from years of infusion. A leather-bound ledger with names and brief notes. People come and he remembers them. A small wooden box with spare thread and a few glass bottles, each labeled by a careful old hand. There is a sense of ritual in the actions here. Preparation precedes every treatment. The warming of water, the washing of hands, the blessing under breath that steadies the spirit. He treats illness not only with instruments but with a steadiness that calms the patient. In a time when fear can worsen illness, calm itself is a remedy. Tonight, as he trims and talks, your mind drifts and stitches images together. A child held tightly by a worried parent, a stable boy limping back from the field, a woman clutching a satchel as she looks for help. You picture them arriving at this door, tired and hopeful, and the old barber greeting each with the same unhurried kindness. He pauses, laying down the scissors and folding his hands for a breath. The lamp's flame flickers and the hum of the brazier seems to answer. For a moment he looks older than he did a minute before, not with frailty but with the weight of many nights like this carried into his bones. He lifts his head, eyes meeting yours, and smiles in a way that asks you to trust the night's slow unraveling. Breathe with me, he says, and the simple invitation folds like a blanket around you. Still. The night stretches longer and softer. He begins again, not with suddenness but with a continuation, as though you had been walking a path together and now simply follow the next bend. He leans forward, the rasp of leather on steel resuming its steady cadence, and in that sound you feel the old room breathe with you. There is more to tell, he says, and his voice settles you deeper into the chair. He brushes a stray hair from your shoulder and murmurs, almost into your ear, "Let me tell you the story from the beginning." He takes a slow breath before he continues, letting the warmth from the brazier lift into the space between you. The glow softens the lines on his face, and for a moment you see the man he once was, young, eager, learning from an older master in a room much like this one. He folds his cloth over the bowl's edge and dips his fingers into the warm water, letting droplets fall back with small, delicate taps. "You know," he says gently, "when I was an apprentice, the first lesson I learned was not how to cut, not how to stitch, not how to clean a wound. The first lesson was how to watch." His voice settles into a soothing, slow rhythm, like an old lullaby disguised as speech. "My master told me that healing begins with seeing, truly seeing. Not just the injury, not just the fever, but the fear behind the eyes, the way a person breathes when pain is sharp, the way their shoulders tense when they prepare for what must be done." He shakes the water from his fingers and wipes them dry on a linen cloth, keeping every motion gentle, unhurried. "And so," he continues, "I learned to watch before I learned anything else." He moves behind you again, his steps whispering across the wooden planks. You feel air shift as he lifts a small jar and unscrews its lid. A soft herbal scent rises. Lavender, maybe a hint of chamomile, perhaps a trace of marigold crushed with oil. He warms a bit of the mixture between his palms, and then you feel it touched lightly along the back of your neck, the warmth spreading slowly, melting tension the way sunlight melts frost. "This balm," he murmurs. "My master made it the same way. He said the body listens better when comfort arrives first." A calm patient is halfway to healing. He massages gently, slow circular motions, careful not to press too hard. The scent grows warmer, richer, drifting into your breath, encouraging it to lengthen. Outside the window, a distant cart rolls over stones, its wheels knocking a soft rhythm. A dog barks once, then twice and falls silent. The old street settles again, wrapped in nighttime's thick blanket. The barber lowers his voice as if sharing something meant only for this room. There was a time, he says, when people feared coming here, not because of me, but because pain often came with healing. The tools were simple, and the work was done without the comforts people now dream of. But my master taught me something. That even when tools are sharp and tasks are painful, the healer must bring gentleness into the room. A gentle hand makes even the hardest remedy bearable. He circles around to face you again, setting the bomb aside. I remember one evening, he says, sitting on a small stool across from you, when a boy was brought in with a gash on his arm. A stable door had slammed against him. The wound was deep, jagged. The parents were terrified. The boy was trembling from shock, barely breathing. He holds his hands up, looking at them as though the memory is carved into his palms. I was still young, not as calm as I wished to be. My master came beside me and said, "Steady your breath, then steady your hands." He inhales slowly, demonstrating the same breath his master once taught him. You follow without thinking, inhale, exhale, smooth and even. I whispered to the boy, he continues, the same way I speak now, soft, slow. I told him he was brave, that the pain would pass, that we would not rush. And you know, the tension left his shoulders, his breath steadied, and we stitched his wound without fear overtaking him. He smiles faintly, warmth filling the lines again. That day taught me that calm is part of the craft. As you listen, the room feels thicker with comfort, like it has wrapped you in old wool, warm, steady, familiar. He stands, straightening his apron and reaching for another small jar. This one holds a reddish-brown powder, ground bark, perhaps, or iron-rich earth mixed with dried herbs. He doesn't open it, only runs his thumb along the lid as if remembering the many times he used what it holds. This powder helps stop bleeding, he explains. When a wound won't close on its own. It isn't magic. Nothing in this room is. But it is knowledge passed through so many hands before mine that it feels sacred. He sets the jar back down with a soft clink. When people arrive here, he continues, they sit much as you are sitting now. Some come with small worries, an aching tooth, a stubborn splinter, a boil. Others come with heavier troubles, deep cuts, fevers that shake the bones, infections that darken the skin. His voice drops, almost a breath itself. And sometimes, someone comes with a fear they do not speak aloud. He glances once more toward the window, just a flicker of the eyes, barely a moment, but enough that you notice it again. His fingers drum softly on the wooden counter, just once, and then still. A traveler came earlier tonight, he says quietly. He was pale, trembling, not with sickness, with fear. His breath was shallow. His eyes kept darting down the street as though he expected someone to follow him. He folds the cloth in his hands slowly. He spoke of something he saw along the road, something that troubled him deeply. He said he heard cries in the night, not of people, not of animals. Something he could not name. He spoke of smoke rising where no fire should be. And he said, the Barber-Surgeon pauses, his gaze drifting downward. He said he saw a figure standing in the dark, watching travelers pass, not moving, not speaking. The room seems to hold its breath with him. He lets the cloth fall to the table, and his tone shifts back to soothing warmth, as though he doesn't want to pull you too far into the traveler's tale. Fear colors the mind, he says softly. When a person is tired, hungry, or hurt, shadows can take shapes that aren't truly there. I tried to calm him, to give him water and rest. But he insisted he had to keep moving. He leans closer, lowering his voice to a soft whisper. I do not know what he saw. Perhaps nothing. Perhaps something that belongs to the world beyond this little shop. But his words still echo in here. He taps his chest lightly. A healer listens, even when the words are strange. He returns to the counter, lifting a wooden comb, its teeth worn smooth by years of use. But for now, he says, the calm tone returning fully, you are here, and tonight we stay in the warmth, where the lamps burn and the herbs do their work. He begins to comb slowly through your hair, the wooden teeth gliding gently, drawing out any lingering tension. You feel your breath slow again. Outside, the wind murmurs against the window. The lamps sway softly. Footsteps pass somewhere distant, then fade. The barber continues combing, steady and rhythmic. People say, he murmurs, that healing is the work of miracles. But truly it is the work of patience, of tending, of listening, and of being unafraid to sit with another's discomfort until it loosens its grip. His voice softens even more, like a blanket pulled up around your shoulders. So sit with me a little longer, he says. The night is deep, but it is gentle, and we are only at the beginning. He sets the wooden comb aside with deliberate care, as if even the smallest tools deserve respect for their years of service. The brazier in the corner shifts, a low crackle rising as a piece of charcoal settles deeper into the embers. Its glow dances faintly along the walls, making the jars and metal instruments gleam like quiet guardians of the room. The barber-surgeon lowers himself onto a small three-legged stool beside you. He breathes slowly, folding his hands, letting the minutes stretch softly between words. This is how he speaks when telling truths that sit deep inside him. Truths shaped by years, not by moments. When I first learned this work, he says gently, I thought everything depended on knowing exactly what to do with the hands. But the longer I practiced, the more I understood that most people don't come here for the blade or the salve. They come here for quiet, for a place where someone will not rush them, where the night feels less heavy. He looks toward the shelves again, scanning each jar as if everyone carries its own story. His gaze settles on a small clay pot tied with simple twine. He lifts it carefully and places it on the table between you. Inside, packed tightly, is a mixture of dried rose petals, ground fennel, and a pinch of cooling mint. It releases a faint sweetness even through the lid. This, he says softly, is something I prepare for those who cannot sleep, for those whose minds race faster than their bodies can bear. A small pinch in warm water, and the night grows easier. He taps the lid lightly with his thumb. Sleep is a healer as much as any balm or blade. His tone is warm, like a whisper carried through candlelight. He sets the pot back and stands, stretching his shoulders with the ease of a man used to long hours bent over stools and wounds. Then he crosses to a chest beneath the window, an old wooden box with iron hinges, its surface darkened by age. He lifts the lid with a slow creak. Inside are folded linens, some stained from years of careful washing, though still clean. Beside them rest tools wrapped in cloth, a small saw rarely used, a curved hook, a slender needle with strong thread. None of them shine brightly. They are tools meant for use, not display. He touches each with a reverence that surprises you. Tools are not frightening, he says softly, when handled with patience. But the person who wields them, that is what those who come here must trust. He closes the chest gently and returns to your side. People often ask me, he continues, how I learn to keep my hands steady when fear rises in the room. And I always answer the same. My hands know what to do because I give them time. Time to settle. Time to breathe. He smiles faintly, almost to himself. I remember once, on a winter night colder than stone, a man came stumbling through this very door. His leg had been cut by a piece of split wood, deep, clean, but bleeding quickly. He was shaking from the cold and from the sight of his own blood. And I, young and unsure, felt my own heart begin to drum, fast enough that my hands trembled. He lifts his hand now, palm up, showing how steady it is, how still. My master told me then, "You cannot steady another until you steady yourself." He placed a hand on my shoulder just here. He touches his own shoulder lightly, and said, "Breathe once, then another, then begin." You watch the barber as he demonstrates, inhaling through his nose, exhaling slowly, like air passing through a narrow flute. You follow without effort, your own breath lengthening. "And so I breathed," he says, "until my hands remembered their training. And we stitched the man's leg." He walked home that very night. He gives a soft laugh, just a breath of sound, though I made him promise not to chop wood again until morning. He walks toward the wall and lights another small oil lamp. Its flame flutters to life, filling the room with a warmer glow. Shadows soften, stretching like calm silhouettes across the floor. "I often wonder," he muses, "how many nights I've spent in this shop. How many fears I've watched turn into relief. How many people sat where you are sitting now, their shoulders tense at first, only to loosen as the quiet wrapped around them." He traces a finger along the back of your chair, not touching you, just grounding himself in the moment. "There's a rhythm in this place," he says. "A rhythm that belongs to the way people breathe when they're finally allowed to stop rushing. When they realize they don't need to speak quickly, or pretend to be stronger than they feel." He moves again, almost gliding until he's behind you. You hear the soft rustle of fabric as he picks up a clean cloth, warming it over the brazier. The cloth soon releases tiny curls of steam that rise like silent ghosts. Then he gently presses it against the back of your neck and shoulders. Warm, soothing, grounding. "Let that heat sink into you," he murmurs. "Let it soften the stiffness the day left behind." He holds the cloth in place, not pushing, just resting it with a weight that feels comforting and safe. "When people sit in this chair," he says, "they tell me things they have not told anyone else. They speak of their families, their fears, their hopes. Many of them think I forget. But I do not." Pauses. "I carry their stories the way I carry my tools. With care." The brazier crackles again, sending a soft red shimmer across the floorboards. The barber continues in a slower voice, nearly whispering. "There was a woman once who came night after night, asking only to rest a moment in the chair. She never spoke more than a few words. She had lost more than her face could hide. But sitting here in the quiet helped her breathe again. And I realized then that healing is not always about wounds you can see." He lifts the cloth from your shoulders and folds it neatly. "You never know," he says gently, "what someone carries when they walk through that door." His eyes drift toward the window again. That small flicker of attention again. He clasps his hands behind his back, shoulders rising faintly with a breath he quietly steadies. "The traveler," he says after a moment, "spoke of something he could not explain, something that made the hair on his arms stand upright. He asked if he might stay here until dawn. I could not refuse him. Fear changes a person's voice. You can hear it even when they try to hide it." He turns the lamp wick slightly lower, softening the light. He sleeps now in the room behind this shop. But his rest is uneasy. The barber's voice drops even softer, as though he doesn't want to disturb even the walls. "I hope whatever followed him stays on the road." He returns to your side and rests a gentle hand against the back of the chair. "But you need not think of that now," he says, warmth returning to his tone. "For you are here, and here we stay in the calm." He steps back, inhaling deeply, letting the room breathe with him. "Let me continue the story," he whispers. "There is more to tell, and the night is patient." The barber adjusts the lamp until its glow smooths across the room in a gentle, honey-warm layer. Nothing here is rushed. Not the flame, not the breath, not the slow creak of floorboards beneath his steps. The night seems to settle deeper the longer you sit, as though time itself softens inside these walls. He moves to a small wooden shelf where simple cups are stacked beside a clay pitcher. He fills one cup halfway with water warmed earlier on the brazier, then walks it to you with both hands, presenting it like an offering of comfort. "Drink a little," he murmurs. Warm water settles the nerves. When you lift it, the cup feels smooth and familiar, shaped by years of handling. You sip, the warmth sliding through you like a quiet reassurance. The barber watches your shoulders drop just slightly, then nods with a gentle pride. "Good," he says softly. "Even the smallest comfort has its use." He sets the pitcher aside and lowers himself again onto the stool. His hands rest loosely on his knees, palms open, as if inviting the story to flow through them. "I remember," he begins, "a night when a young man came here after a long journey. He was exhausted, frightened, and convinced something had gone terribly wrong within him. He had felt his heart racing all day, his breath short, his mind restless. He feared illness, feared that something inside him was failing. He gives a small exhale, the kind that carries years of memory. When he sat down in this very chair, I placed my hand over his wrist, feeling his pulse. Yes, it was quick, but it eased as soon as he spoke. He told me of troubles at home, of burdens he carried alone, of things he felt ashamed to admit." The barber touches the wooden arm of the chair, tracing the grain with his thumb. "I explained to him that fear can trick the body, that worry can mimic sickness, that the heart often races when the mind is too full." He looks up at you, his smile faint but full of understanding. He left feeling lighter, not healed completely but steadied, and that, sometimes, is enough. His voice, steady as warm cloth on cool skin, fills the quiet again. People often think healing means removing pain entirely, but healing also means easing the weight someone carries, even if just enough to help them walk out the door with steadier steps. He rises once more and crosses to another shelf, this one narrower, holding a row of glass bottles in different shapes. Some hold dark liquids, some powders, some only scraps of herbs wrapped in cloth. He selects one, a small bottle filled with a pale golden oil. He warms a drop between his fingers, then steps behind you. "This oil," he says quietly, "has been used for generations to loosen tight muscles. A mix of crushed blossoms and pressed seeds. Nothing costly, nothing rare. But its scent calms the breath." You feel his fingertips touch the sides of your neck, just below the ears, slow and deliberate. He spreads the warm oil in soft circles, barely applying pressure. The scent lifts into the air, floral, subtle, deep. "Your breath," he whispers, "should feel like it is traveling through warm air, not cold." He lets the strokes lengthen, brushing downward over the tops of your shoulders. Outside, the wind hushes itself, and for a moment the world seems to pause, waiting. He continues speaking, slow, steady, like a distant tide. "When I was an apprentice, my master told me, a healer must not only mend. He must also listen to what silence tells him. I never understood that until years passed. Silence speaks of fear, of sorrow, of pain someone hides behind their eyes. Silence tells you when a person needs words, and when they need only presence." He wipes his hands on a cloth and steps around in front of you again. "But silence also tells you," he adds more quietly, "when something outside is not quite as it should be." His gaze drifts to the window again, not sharply, but with that same subtle pull you noticed in earlier moments. The flame from the lamp flickers, stretching shadows across the wood. You hear faint sounds from the street, soft, distant footsteps. Then none. He folds his arms lightly, fingers tapping his sleeve once before settling. "The traveler spoke of seeing lights between the trees," he says, voice soft as a breath. "Lights that did not move like torches, and did not sway like lanterns. He said they hovered, dim one moment and bright the next." Pauses. "I asked if he was feverish. He said no. His skin was cool, his eyes clear. But his voice trembled when he spoke of those lights." The barber lowers himself back into the stool across from you, leaning forward with his forearms resting gently on his knees. "There are many things in this world," he says slowly, "that we do not understand, and fear often grows where knowledge ends." I told him that the mind can shape what the night hides, that long journeys and lack of sleep can turn shadows into strange things. But then he adds, almost in a whisper, "And yet, part of me wonders if he truly saw something." He sits back, exhaling through his nose, steadying himself as though brushing away a thought that tried to linger too long. After a moment, he stands again and reaches for another tool, this time a simple wooden brush with soft bristles. He sweeps the loose hairs from your shoulders, each stroke slow, tender, unhurried. "That's it," he murmurs. "Let them fall away like dust at the end of a long day." He brushes down the front of your sleeves as well, gentle as a breath. "What matters most," he continues, "is not what the traveler saw, but that he needed a place to rest, somewhere safe, somewhere quiet. Fear exhausts a person faster than any wound." The barber sets the brush down and uses his forearm to wipe a faint sheen from his brow. "The world outside this shop, it can be uncertain, but inside these walls I keep a promise, to steady those who enter, to give them a place where fear does not have the loudest voice." His voice deepens slightly, warm like the glow of the brazier. "And you, sitting here in this stillness, you remind me of how many nights have passed in such gentle company." He rests a hand on the back of the chair and lowers his tone once more. "So breathe. Let the night sit with you. There is no rush, none at all. You exhale without meaning to, the air leaving slowly, easily." The barber nods at the sound of your breath. "There," he says softly. "That is how the body begins to loosen its hold on the day." He steps back, clasping his hands lightly behind him. "Our story continues," he says in a gentle whisper. "And night still has many hours left to offer." The barber adjusts the stool beneath him, settling into it with the slow grace of someone who works with both his hands and his patience. The lamp's flame sways in a small arc, casting warm streaks across the wooden walls. The air feels softened, almost thick with comfort, as though it has absorbed the countless quiet conversations held here through the years. He folds a fresh linen cloth and drapes it over his arm, not because he needs it, but because the ritual itself seems to calm him. "You ever notice," he begins quietly, "how the night has its own heartbeat?" He taps the side of the chair, tap, 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 just soft enough to blend with the faint hum from outside. "Some nights, everything moves in rhythm. Others, the rhythm slips. Something out there stirs when it shouldn't." He glances toward the door. Not alarmed, just watchful. "These walls have heard much," he continues. "Laughter, secrets whispered like fading breath. And sometimes, the sound of someone pacing outside, unsure whether they should step in or keep walking." His words drift through the warm air like slow-moving smoke. He shifts closer and picks up a cloth dipped in lightly scented water. Without a word, he lays it across the back of your neck. The warmth spreads, soothing the muscles there, sending a quiet shiver of relief down your spine. "There you go," he murmurs. "Let the heat sink in. It tells the body it's safe." He presses the cloth gently, then smooths it outward along your shoulders. "People carry stress in places they never speak of," he says. "And when the shoulders tighten, it's usually because the person feels like they have to hold the world together alone." He lets the cloth rest for a moment. "Tell me something," he says softly. "When's the last time you felt truly unburdened? Not just for a moment, but fully?" His tone suggests he already knows the answer, that most people in his chair haven't felt unburdened in a very long time. He doesn't wait for your response. Instead, he removes the cloth, folds it, and sets it aside. Then he takes a long breath, grounding himself, as if preparing to share something he doesn't tell just anyone. "There was an evening," he begins, "when an older man came through that door. Strong build, steady gaze. But something about him, his silence, felt heavy. He took a seat right where you're sitting now. The barber walks to the counter and places both palms on it, leaning slightly as he recalls the memory. He said he had been hearing noises at night. Not loud, not obvious. Just something that felt out of place. Like footsteps pacing behind his home when no one should have been there. Like someone clearing their throat from the darkness. Not threatening, but unsettling. He turns back to you. I asked if he'd spoken to his neighbors. He shook his head. Said he didn't want to sound foolish. The barber moves again, organizing tools though they were already in perfect order. He told me he used to sleep easily, but then the quiet began to feel wrong. Familiar sounds disappeared, replaced by new ones. Patterns changed, and he could sense it, something shifting in the nights. The barber's hands pause over a wooden comb. When I checked his pulse it raced, he says. Not from physical strain, but from the weight of uncertainty. The body knows when the world around it changes, even if the mind can't explain how. He sits again, exhaling softly. He left calmer, but I could tell he still felt watched by something he couldn't name. He looks to the window, again that gentle pull in his gaze. The night outside seems still, but there is a question in the silence. The barber clears his throat lightly and returns to you, placing both hands on the chair's back. His thumbs gently press the base of your skull, slow and steady. This area, he says, collects tension before the mind even notices it's stressed. Loosen it a little, and the breath finds its strength again. He works with slow precision, each movement a small act of reassurance. You know, he continues, not every unusual thing in the night is meant to be feared. Some are simply pieces of the world we don't yet understand. But when the mind is tired, it fills the unknown with worry. He pauses, fingers resting calmly. That's why places like this matter. A small room, a warm lamp, and someone willing to sit with you until the mind stops racing. He steps aside and reaches for a small clay cup filled with herbal steam. He sets it on the nearby table, the mist rising in gentle spirals. Breathe that in, he says. It's good for grounding the senses. Helps the thoughts settle so nothing feels too sharp. As you inhale, a faint floral aroma drifts upward, soft but deep enough to warm the chest. He lowers his voice again. You ever feel like the air changes before something happens? Little thicker, a little heavier, like the night is holding its breath. He rubs his palms together absently. I feel that sometimes, and when I do, pay attention, not out of fear, just respect. He picks up a broom and begins sweeping the floor in careful, quiet strokes. Years back, he says, a traveler stopped here right before dawn. Claimed he'd seen shadows moving across the rooftops. Wide shapes, silent and slow. Said they weren't animals. Weren't people. Just shapes. He sweeps a bit more, then sets the broom aside. I didn't know what to tell him. Maybe he saw something real. Maybe exhaustion tricked him. But what I do know is this. When he sat in this chair, shoulders trembling, he needed calm more than answers. The barber returns to you. His presence steady as ever. And that is why this place exists. People come here carrying things their minds don't know how to handle. Strange sights, strange sounds, strange feelings. And all I can offer is warmth, stillness, and a reminder that not everything unknown is dangerous. He lifts the lamp slightly, adjusting the wick so the flame glows brighter. There, he says gently. A bit more light makes the night feel less like it's pressing in. He settles the lamp back onto the table and smiles faintly. You're doing well, he murmurs. Your breath has changed. Slower, deeper. The body knows when it's safe. He steps back, crossing his arms loosely. The night isn't finished yet. There's more to tell, more to unfold. Just sit with it, and let the story move at its own pace. He nods once, calm and certain. Our tale continues. The barber lets the quiet stretch for a moment, as though he's listening to something deeper than the soft creaking of the wooden beams. He moves slowly, the way someone moves when they don't want to disturb the air around them. Then he draws in a gentle breath and steps closer again. Lean back just a bit, he whispers, guiding you with a light touch on your shoulder. Let the chair hold you. You don't need to keep yourself upright all the time. Not here. The chair reclines with a soft groan, the kind that has grown familiar with decades of use. A faint warmth from the oil lamp paints your surroundings in gold, softening every edge. He dips a cloth into warm water mixed with herbs and begins to cleanse your face. Small circles, slow motions, nothing hurried or sharp. It's funny, he murmurs, how a simple touch like this can calm the storm inside the mind. People think the blade is my main tool. But no, it's the cloth, the warmth, the quiet. He folds the cloth, presses it gently beneath your jaw. Back then, he continues, a barber wasn't just someone who trimmed hair or shaped a beard. We tended the wounded, eased fevers, guided frightened souls through long nights. His fingers glide behind your ears, smoothing tension away. And many nights, he adds, voice softening even more, we listened. He steps around to the other side of the chair, his boots tapping lightly on the wooden floor. You'd be surprised how many people feel safer speaking in a small room with the hum of a lamp instead of in the open street. Night has a way of pulling truth out of a person. He picks up a small bowl with warm water and lightly splashes his fingers before touching your temples. You have a strong mind, he says gently, but it's tired. I can tell by the way your breath hesitates near the end of each inhale. That usually means someone has been pushing through more than their share. He begins a slow, careful massage at your temples, circles so soft they feel like drifting clouds. There was a woman once, he says quietly. She sat here trembling. Said she kept waking in the night with a feeling like someone was brushing their fingers across her hair. No footsteps, no voices, just that faint sensation. He closes his eyes briefly as he recalls. She wasn't frightened of danger. She was frightened of not knowing. His hands pause for a moment, resting lightly against your skin. The unknown can weigh heavier than the blade, he murmurs. He resumes the gentle circles, making the tension melt away. She asked me if I believed her, and I told her the same thing I'm telling you now. When a person feels something deeply, my place isn't to doubt it. My place is to understand the weight it puts on their chest and ease it. He slowly lowers his hands. Whatever you've been holding, he says softly, you don't have to grip it so tightly in this room. He walks toward his workbench and picks up a slender wooden instrument. It looks like a small probe, polished by years of use. Do not worry, he says with a faint smile. This isn't for anything painful, just for loosening the pressure spots around the neck. Helps the breath flow easier. He moves behind you again and begins pressing with the rounded end of the instrument, slow and rhythmic against the base of your neck. You know, he continues, there's a certain stillness in these late hours that makes the world feel like it's waiting for something. People say the night whispers, but I think it simply listens. The pressure he applies remains consistent. Never too much, never too little. Just enough to coax comfort into your muscles. There was once a boy who came to me, he says. Young, but already carrying the worries of someone twice his age. He said he kept hearing faint tapping outside his window every night. The barber's fingers press down, then release, working carefully. He thought it was someone trying to speak to him, someone who couldn't find the words. And instead of telling anyone, he kept it inside until his breath grew tight and his sleep grew thin. He exhales slowly, almost sadly. When he sat here, I felt his pulse, fast, uneven. Not from fear of danger, from fear of uncertainty. It eats away at a person quietly. He sets the wooden tool aside and places both hands on your shoulders, his palms warm and steady. So I helped him breathe again, not by solving the mystery, but by reminding his body that it didn't have to fight every moment. He presses his thumbs gently into the muscles just above your shoulder blades. The pressure melts like warm wax spreading through your back. There, he whispers. Yes, right there. That knot has been waiting for release for a long time. He works it loose with slow, circular motions. You're doing well, he says. Let the breath fall naturally. No need to force it. He steps to the side, his movements soft as drifting dust. You ever notice, he continues, how the mind can replay the same quiet worry again and again, even when the body is tired? Loops, circles. It insists. He gently tilts your head to the side, keeping it supported as he massages the long muscles of your neck. That's why these moments matter. Stillness reminds the mind that not every thought deserves attention. He lets your head settle comfortably against the chair's cushion. Back in those times, he adds thoughtfully, people believed the night carried spirits of memory. Not harmful. Just shadows of old feelings drifting through the streets. And sometimes when someone was exhausted, they mistook their own thoughts for something outside. He drapes a fresh cloth over your shoulders, soft as worn cotton. I think people today feel the same, he murmurs. The world rushes so loudly that the smallest quiet sound feels strange, and the smallest worry feels heavy. He dips his fingers into oil scented with faint herbs and begins to smooth it into your hairline. This room isn't much, he says. Just wood, cloth, steel, and flame. But it's enough to let the mind unclench. His voice lowers even more, soft as breath. And tonight you're safe here. The walls hold steady. The lamp stays warm. And I am watching over the quiet so you don't have to. He pauses, letting the silence settle like dust on velvet. Then gently, our night continues. The barber moves slowly around the room, as though each step is placed with intention. He pauses near the shelf where several jars are kept. Glass worn by time, filled with leaves, powders, and oils gathered from fields and gardens long before the sun dipped behind the rooftops. He picks up one small jar, turning it in his hand so the light from the lamp shines through the faint green tint of the glass. This one, he says softly, holds crushed mint and a little dried bark, not for flavor, for clarity. It helps steady thoughts when they wander too quickly. He unscrews the lid, letting the aroma drift faintly through the room. Fresh, cool, almost like early morning air before the world wakes. He sets the jar down and returns to you. It's strange, he murmurs, how the mind can hold onto a single sound, a single worry, and refuse to let it go. People used to tell me they thought the night was speaking to them. But usually, it was just their own heartbeat echoing through the quiet. He reaches for a small brush with soft bristles and begins to dust along the sides of your face and jaw. Slow strokes, like a breeze brushing past a window. That sensation, he says, is one of my favorites. Light contact tells the nerves that they can relax. Makes the breath slow without effort. He brushes beneath your chin, then along your cheeks. Each motion soft enough to feel like drifting threads of fabric. There was a quiet boy who came to me once, he continues. He didn't speak at first. Just sat in the chair, eyes wide, shoulders tight like he was bracing for something. He sets the brush aside. He finally whispered that he'd been hearing tapping in the walls at night. Soft, steady, always at the same hour. But when he told others, they laughed. Or told him it was rats. Or wind. The barber shakes his head slowly. But he knew the difference between the wind and something that feels purposeful. He dips a cloth into warm water again and presses it lightly against your forehead. I didn't tell him he was wrong. I just told him that whatever was tapping hadn't harmed him. And the fear he felt wasn't from the sound. It was from feeling alone with it. He wipes gently, moving the cloth across your brow and temples. And sometimes, he murmurs, all a person needs is someone to sit with them in the quiet until their heartbeat settles. He folds the cloth and sets it aside. You know, he continues, leaning against the counter, the nights back then weren't as empty as people imagine them. Even in the still hours, you'd hear the creak of a wagon wheel in the distance. The clink of a pot cooling by the fire. The soft hum of someone saying a prayer before sleep. He glances toward the window again, where darkness presses softly against the wooden frame. Different times, yes, but worries weren't so different from today. He picks up a small metal tool, thin, curved slightly at the end, and holds it up. This one helps loosen the muscles along the scalp, he explains. Releases tension that people don't even realize they're holding. He begins moving it through your hair in slow, careful sweeps. The sensation is gentle, like raindrops landing one by one. People worked hard, he says. Long days, heavy tasks, and when night came, sometimes the body carried so much strain that sleep felt impossible. So they'd come here, sit just as you are now. Let the quiet undo what the day had done. He pauses for a moment, running his fingers through your hair to check for knots. One evening, he says, a traveler came through this door with trembling hands. Not from cold, not from hunger, from something he'd seen on the road. He sets the tool aside and moves closer, lowering his voice as though the memory itself demands softness. He said he had been walking alone just after sunset when he noticed a figure far behind him. Not rushing, not hiding, just matching his pace, step for step. Always the same distance away. The barber crosses his arms loosely. He couldn't make out the face, could barely make out the shape. But every time he slowed, the figure slowed. Every time he quickened, the figure did too. He sighs gently. He wasn't frightened of the figure itself. He was frightened of not understanding why it followed. He takes a moment before continuing. When he reached town, he turned to look again, and the road behind him was empty, quiet, still. The barber places a comforting hand on your arm. He came here because even though he felt safe inside the walls, his mind hadn't caught up yet. His pulse was racing like he was still out on that road. It took nearly an hour for his breath to settle. He returns to his tools, adjusting them neatly, though they were already in perfect order. I tell you these things, he says softly, because everyone has their own strange nights. Nights when the mind feels too alert. Nights when the darkness feels heavier than usual. He walks behind you and gently lifts your chin with 2 fingers, just enough to stretch the muscles of your neck. Let go, he whispers. Just let the breath fall. He begins a slow massage down the sides of your neck, his thumbs moving in long downward strokes. You're doing very well, he murmurs. Your shoulders are beginning to release. Your jaw is loosening. Your breath is finding its rhythm. He moves to your upper back, pressing gently along the muscles beside your spine. This part, he says quietly, carries the weight of unspoken thoughts. He presses again, slower this time. And this part, he continues, holds the things you tell yourself you'll deal with later. Another slow press. But in here, you don't have to deal with anything at all. Not for now. Just let the quiet take its place. He steps back, letting the warmth of the lamp settle over the room again. You're safe, he says. You're calm. You're not walking alone on any strange road. You're here with me, in the stillness of a quiet night. He adjusts the lamp's wick, softening the light. And our night moves deeper. The barber lets the air settle, giving the room a chance to breathe with you. The flame in the lamp bends slightly as if nodding along to the quiet rhythm your breath is finding. He moves to the side, picking up a small wooden bowl with smooth edges worn down by years of handling. He holds it in both hands for a moment before dipping his fingers into a warm mixture inside. This blend, he says softly, is for easing the muscles around the face. People don't realize how much tension hides there. It sits beneath the skin, coiled like a tiny spring. He steps toward you, fingertips glistening faintly with the warm mixture, and begins to apply it along the jawline in gentle strokes, so soft they feel like they're barely there. That's it, he murmurs. Let the jaw loosen. When this part relaxes, the mind often follows. He works slowly, fingertips moving in tiny circles just beneath your ears, down toward your chin, then back upward again. You'd be surprised, he continues, how many travelers came through my door with clenched jaws from long days of silence. People forget that silence itself can be heavy. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that makes a person feel small. He shifts his touch to your cheeks, massaging in light motions that blend into the warmth of the room. There was a merchant once, he says quietly. He had been on the road for weeks. By the time he reached my shop, he could barely speak. Not because of sickness, but because his jaw had locked tight from holding back every thought he didn't want to say aloud. The barber smiles faintly, recalling. He sat right where you're sitting now. For the first few minutes, I didn't touch a tool. I simply rested warm cloths against his face and let the steam do the work. Slowly, his jaw released. And only then did he tell me how lonely the road had been. He wipes his fingers clean on a folded cloth and sets the bowl aside. That's the thing about working with both hair and healing, he says softly. It teaches you that people carry their stories in their muscles, not just their voices. He moves behind you again, placing both hands on your shoulders with a warm, grounding touch. Relax here, he whispers, gently applying pressure. Let the weight fall away. He presses downward with his palms, slow and steady, coaxing your shoulders to settle lower, to soften, to release the hidden strain. Good, he murmurs. Yes, that's better. He begins kneading the muscles at the tops of your shoulders, each motion unhurried. Another fellow came to me late one night, he says, claiming he heard whispers outside his window. Not words, just movement. Like breath brushing across old wood. He keeps massaging, allowing the rhythm of his hands to match the slow cadence of his speech. He said he tried to ignore it, tried to pretend it was wind or animals or anything familiar. But some nights, the unfamiliar wins. The barber moves his thumb in a slow arc across your right shoulder blade. When he told me his story, his voice trembled more than he realized. Sometimes the real fear isn't the sound itself. It's the idea that no one will believe you heard it. He presses down gently, using both thumbs to ease a knot that had been hiding deep beneath the surface. There, he whispers. That one's been waiting a long time. He pauses, letting the muscle soften. Back then, he continues, people didn't have large hospitals or many places to go when their minds felt unsettled. So they came to people like me. Not for answers, but for calm. He walks around to your front again and picks up a wooden comb with wide, polished teeth. This one, he explains softly, slides through the hair without pulling. It's meant for rest, not grooming. He draws the comb slowly through your hair, each stroke gentle, almost meditative. You can hear it, can't you, he says. That soft whispering sound the wood makes as it moves. Like rain drifting across old rooftops. He continues combing, the rhythm steady and soothing. I remember an old woman who visited often. She didn't want her hair trimmed. Didn't want medicine. She just wanted the comb. Said it reminded her of her childhood. Of evenings spent near the fire while someone tended to her hair. He smiles quietly to himself. She always left calmer than she arrived. Sometimes the simplest rituals are the most powerful. He places the comb aside and gently rubs your scalp with both hands, fingertips moving in slow spirals. This part, he murmurs, is where thoughts settle when they've been circling too long. When I release tension here, people often sigh without meaning to. He's right. You feel the instinct to exhale deeply. And when you do, your chest eases in a way it hadn't for hours. There you go, he whispers. Let the breath carry the weight away. He continues the scalp massage, shifting gradually toward the back of your head, then down to the base of the skull. You know, he says quietly, people talked a lot about spirits and shadows back then. But most of the time, the real ghosts were thoughts left wandering too long. He gently cups the back of your head in both hands. And thoughts calm fastest when they feel supported. He holds your head with steady palms, not pushing, not pulling, just offering warmth and stillness. Feels like the room itself is breathing with you. The night outside may be dark, he murmurs, but inside this room, the light holds steady. Nothing can trouble you here. He slowly releases your head and steps back. You're settling in now, he observes softly. Your breath has found its depth. Your muscles are listening. And the quiet is on your side. He adjusts the lamp wick again, lowering the flame just slightly to deepen the softness of the room. We continue gently, he says. The night is long and we are in no hurry. A moment passes. The room almost hums with ease. Our story moves forward, he whispers. The barber takes a slow breath, letting the moment hover between you like a soft haze. He moves with unhurried steps to the far corner of the room where a small wooden chest sits, its surface scarred from years of use, its metal latch dulled by countless touches. He kneels beside it with a reverence usually reserved for sacred things. This old chest, he says softly, brushing his hand along the lid, holds tools I only bring out when the mind needs deeper quiet. Not sharper blades, quieter instruments. He lifts the lid, and the hinges creak gently, as though waking from a long rest. From inside, he removes a small cloth bundle and carries it to the table near you. I've had these since I was young, he murmurs, slowly unfolding the cloth to reveal slender wooden rods, each carved smooth and polished with care. Not for cutting, not for healing wounds. These are for listening. He picks up one of the rods and holds it between his fingers, feeling its balance. People used to think, he continues, that the body speaks through its tension. I learned that the body also speaks through quiet spots, places where the mind sinks in too deeply. He moves behind you again. I'm going to press along the sides of your neck and shoulders, he says in a low whisper. Tell me if anything feels sharp or uncomfortable. The rod touches your skin, cool at first, then warm as it takes on your temperature. He presses gently along the line where your neck meets your shoulder. Good, he murmurs. No flinch. That means your breath is settling. He slides the rod a little lower, pressing softly in small increments. This helps draw out the last bits of strain the body tries to hide, he explains. Most people don't even notice that they're holding tension here until it begins to release. He continues carefully, pausing whenever the muscle softens beneath the pressure. You're doing well, he murmurs. Your body is listening. He lifts the rod and sets it aside before moving to your side. His hands warm from the lamplight. You know, he says, nights like this used to bring all kinds of souls to my door. Those searching for answers. Those carrying burdens. And sometimes those who didn't know what they sought. Only that something felt off. He leans on the back of your chair gently. There was a man once, he begins, who said he kept waking to the sound of water dripping. But he lived nowhere near a stream. No leaks, no barrels, no puddles. Just this steady dripping. Always in the same rhythm. He taps his finger lightly on the wood. Drip, drip, drip. He tried to ignore it, he continues softly. But every night the sound returned. When he lay down, his heart beat in time with it. When he sat up, the sound stopped. The barber's voice fades just a little, as if remembering something from far away. He told me he feared he was losing his mind. That maybe the sound wasn't outside at all, but inside. The barber picks up a warm cloth and rests it across your shoulders, letting the heat seep slowly into your skin. When he came here, he says, smoothing the cloth, I felt his pulse, and it was tapping in the same rhythm he described. Not dripping water, his own heartbeat, echoing through the quiet. He smiles softly. Sometimes the mind creates shapes and sounds out of loneliness. He removes the cloth and begins massaging the tops of your shoulders again. Slower this time, using both thumbs to coax deep release. Let go, he whispers gently. You're safe. The warmth of his hands merges with the warmth of the room, creating a cocoon of softness around you. The barber pauses for a moment, then moves to his small stove and pours warm water into a shallow bowl. He dips both hands into it, shaking off the excess before returning to you with palms still glistening. Warm hands help the mind listen more easily, he explains. He places his hands lightly against the back of your neck, spreading the warmth outward in broad, sweeping motions. People often asked me, he says quietly, why I worked so late into the night. Why I didn't close my doors as the streets grew quiet. His motions slow, almost like drifting clouds. I always said the same thing, because the night is when the heart speaks most honestly. He moves his hands down your shoulders, pressing gently. And some hearts only find their voice when the world around them has fallen asleep. He steps back, giving you space to breathe. You're relaxing deeper, he says softly. Your shoulders have changed, they've dropped. That's good. He moves around you again, his steps barely audible on the wooden floor. I met a man once who came to me shaking, he continues. He said he'd seen shadows pass across his window at night. Not people, not animals, just soft shapes moving where nothing should move. He brushes a stray strand of hair from your forehead. He was exhausted, not from fear, but from trying to explain to others who dismissed what he felt. The barber reaches for a small bottle of oil and pours a tiny amount into his hands, rubbing them together until the scent mixes with the warmth. Herbal, grounding, almost like pine and earth. People need someone to listen more than they need someone to fix, he says quietly. He massages your scalp again, fingertips moving in firm yet gentle circles. The oil warms the skin, relaxing the deeper layers of tension. You're doing wonderfully, he murmurs. Let your breath find its own pace. Don't try to control it. He moves down to your temples, then across your brow, smoothing faint lines you didn't notice were there. Many who came to me weren't wounded in body, he says. They were wounded in thought. And when thoughts run wild, even the smallest sound in the night feels like a message. He runs his fingers down the sides of your face, slow enough to lull the nerves into stillness. Tonight, nothing is chasing you, he whispers. Nothing is waiting outside your door. Nothing is calling your name from the shadows. He steps back and lets the room breathe again. There is only this place, this quiet, this moment. The lamp flickers gently, throwing soft, wavering light across the wooden walls. The barber folds his hands in front of him. Our night moves deeper still, he says softly, and the calm grows thicker, like evening mist settling over still water. He steps toward you once more, voice lowering almost to a hum. The barber stands behind you for a long, calm moment, letting the soft hush of the room settle in. The oil lamp flickers gently, casting warm gold light across the walls, and the faint scent of herbs lingers in the air like a slow-moving breeze. You're drifting nicely, he whispers, his voice steady as a quiet river. Your breath is gentler now. Your shoulders have loosened. The night listens when you relax like this. He moves toward the shelf near the corner, where small jars rest in a neat line, each filled with dried leaves and curled roots. He selects a jar with a faded label, opens it, and lets a pinch of the contents fall into the warm bowl of water beside you. A subtle aroma rises, earthy, calming, deep. These herbs, he murmurs, swirling the water with 2 fingers, were taught to me when I was still learning how to steady my hands. Back then, I didn't understand how something so simple could soothe the mind. But over time, I learned that scent can guide the thoughts just as surely as a hand can guide a blade. He comes to stand at your side, dipping a cloth into the warm herbal water, letting it absorb the mixture slowly. When he lifts it out, steam curls softly upward. I'll place this across your neck, he says gently. Let it warm the muscles. The warmth clears out the tightness little by little. He lays the cloth across your skin, and the heat melts into you like soft sunlight after a long gray morning. There, he whispers. Just breathe with it. Let it spread. He presses lightly on the cloth with both hands, anchoring the warmth in place. You know, he continues, there were people who believed a barber's hands could read the mind. They thought that by touching the neck, the temples, the scalp, a barber could understand someone more clearly than anyone else. He lifts the cloth, folds it, and sets it back in the water. I never believed I could read minds, he says, brushing the back of his hand against your cheek to wipe away stray moisture. But I did learn to feel burdens. You can sense when a person carries something too heavy for their breath. And sometimes, just being here in this quiet room helps them set it down. He steps closer to you again and reaches for a small wooden comb. It's smooth, worn from years of use. Its teeth shaped carefully by hand. I'll comb through your hair now, he murmurs. Not for grooming, just for combing. He begins at the top of your head, drawing the comb down slowly, each stroke measured and soft. The sound of the comb gliding through your hair is gentle, rhythmic. This sound, he says quietly, used to relax people even more than warm cloths or oils. It reminds them of someone caring for them, even if no one ever did. It fills in the missing places. He continues the strokes, slow, unhurried, with pauses in between. One woman came to me once, he recalls. She was strong, stern, carried herself like she feared nothing. But when I combed her hair, she cried. Not loud, not with sobs, just quiet tears running down her cheeks. She said she couldn't remember the last time anyone touched her gently. He sets the comb aside and places his fingertips at the base of your skull. Everyone needs gentleness, he murmurs. Even the strongest souls. His fingers begin to massage the back of your head in steady circular motions, easing into each small muscle with patient care. Let your breath fall deeper, he says softly. Let it travel down your spine like warm sand. He moves his hands outward to the hinges of your jaw. This spot here, he says, pressing gently, holds more tension than most people realize. You chew, you talk, you grind your teeth at night without knowing. I'll ease it. His thumbs move slowly, pressing upward and outward in a careful rhythm. There you go, he whispers. Right there, that release. A moment passes, filled only with the faint crackle of the lamp. Then the barber steps back, stretches his shoulders quietly, and walks toward the wooden storage box near his chair. From inside he takes out a long, thin cloth, deep red, worn at the corners. He drapes it over his arm thoughtfully. I want to show you something, he says. Not a tool. A memory. He unfolds the cloth, revealing a small metal charm tucked inside. It's simple. A round disc with markings etched by hand. This was given to me by my old teacher, he explains. The man who taught me how to hold a blade steady. And how to hold a person steady, too. He turns the charm over in his palm. He used to say the hands can protect just as well as they can cut. That a barber-surgeon must know when not to act, just as much as knowing when to act. The barber sets the charm on the table, letting it glimmer faintly in the lamplight. He once stopped me from using a blade when my nerves were high. I didn't understand why. Thought I was ready. But he said, if your breath skips, your hand skips. He smiles softly. So he taught me to slow down. Breathe. Feel the weight of the world settle. Then lift only what you can carry. He returns to you, resting his hand gently on your shoulder. I try to teach the same thing now, he whispers. Even tonight. Your breath tells me your pace. And your pace tells me how deep we go. He moves behind you once more, placing his palms on your upper back, one on each side of your spine. I'm going to press down the muscles here, he says calmly. They hold old memories. Not thoughts. Memories your body hasn't spoken of in a long time. His thumbs press gently along each line, working downward in slow trails. Sometimes these places hold fear, he murmurs. Sometimes grief. Sometimes the quiet ache of something unfinished. He moves lower. And sometimes they hold nothing but tiredness. He lifts his hands for a moment, letting the warmth linger. Tonight, yours mostly hold tiredness. Nothing heavy, nothing dark. Just the quiet kind of exhaustion people carry when they've been strong for too long. He sweeps his hands upward again toward your shoulders, gathering the last bits of tension and smoothing them outward. Feel that, he murmurs. That little wave that runs through your back when the muscles give way. That's the body saying, "All right, I'll rest now." The lamp flickers, dimming slightly before returning to its usual soft glow. The barber steps away, picks up the small bowl of herbal water, and tilts it to watch the bits of leaves drift slowly within. "Our night is settling deeper," he says quietly. "The kind of deep where whispers feel like footsteps and the stillness feels almost alive." He smiles faintly. "We're not done yet, but you're sinking beautifully." He sets the bowl aside and lowers his voice. The room settles into a deeper quiet, the kind that feels thick and soft, almost like a blanket laid gently over everything. The barber stands still for a moment, simply watching the slow drift of your breath, the way your shoulders rise and fall with a calm that wasn't there before. "You're settling into the night just right," he whispers. "There's a certain moment, right about now, when the mind stops holding itself upright and finally lets the body do the resting." He walks slowly toward the far wall where a narrow wooden shelf holds several curious items. A pair of old shears, a slender needle used long ago for stitching wounds, a small bowl carved from horn, and a roll of cloth dyed a calm muted blue. He picks up the horn bowl, turns it in his hands as though weighing a memory, and carries it back to you. "This bowl," he says softly, "is used for a practice many have forgotten. Not harmful, not sharp. Just a way to let the body release heat trapped deep inside." He sets the bowl on the table and places his palm flat against your upper back again. "Some called it cooling the fire," he murmurs. "Because stress doesn't always feel like fear or pain. Sometimes it feels like warmth that has nowhere to go." He reaches for a cloth, dips it into cool water, and wrings it out with slow, deliberate motions. "I'm going to cool the skin on the back of your neck," he says gently. "Just for balance. Warmth draws out tension. Coolness settles the nerves." He lays the cloth at the base of your neck, and the contrast makes your muscles relax in a different way, like they exhale. "Good," he whispers. "Just breathe with that. Let the coolness pull everything down." He steps back, watching the subtle shift in your posture. "You know," he says in a thoughtful tone, "I once worked on a traveler who carried heat so deep inside him, it kept him awake no matter how still the night became." His mind raced. His chest felt tight. Even his heartbeat thudded like a drum. The barber removes the cool cloth and folds it neatly, setting it aside. "When he sat in this chair," he continues, "he didn't speak at first. People rarely do when the exhaustion reaches that point. He just stared at the floor, as if the floor would answer questions he never dared to ask." The barber comes to stand in front of you, leaning slightly to observe your eyes. Not fully open, not fully closed. "You're slipping into that softer place," he murmurs approvingly. "That's good. Stay in it." He lightly places his fingertips under your chin and tilts your head just a little so your neck stretches gently. "With that traveler," he continues, "I used only my hands. No blades, no comb. Just touch, slow, steady, quiet." And slowly, his breath stopped fighting him. He lowers your head again with care, not rushing a single movement. I remember thinking, some people don't need healing. They need someone to stay with them long enough for their heartbeat to remember its own rhythm. He moves to your side, resting one hand on the back of your shoulder. "And that's what you're doing now," he whispers. "Letting your heartbeat remember." He massages your upper arm with long, steady motions, following the line of muscle all the way to your elbow. His thumbs press gently into the soft tissue, coaxing out little knots that melt almost instantly. "When I traveled in my younger years," he says softly, "I learned that different places had different ways of comforting the tired. Some used steam, some used silence, some used chanting. But all of them shared one belief. A person relaxes best when they feel seen. He places both hands around your forearm, rubbing up and down in smooth waves. That's what this place is, he whispers. A room where you are seen, not as someone strong or tired or busy, just as someone who deserves rest. He releases your arm and takes a slow step back. You're doing beautifully. Your breath has dropped into that deep, even rhythm I wait for. He turns toward the corner of the room where a small wooden cabinet sits, opens its door, and brings out a tiny metal cup. This cup holds something very simple, he says. A mixture of warm oil and crushed leaves. Not for pain, not for sickness, just for calming the lines of tension across the chest. He warms the mixture with his hands, then kneels in front of you. Place your hand here, he says gently, guiding your hand to your upper chest. Feel your breath move under your palm. He dips his fingers into the cup and begins massaging small circles just below your collarbones. Soft, measured motions. These muscles, he murmurs, tighten when the heart has been carrying too much. Even if you don't notice, they tighten all the same. When I work here, the breath deepens. The mind loosens. His fingers glide slowly, spreading the warmth across your upper chest and shoulders. There, he whispers. Let that sink in like soft rain. He continues for several long minutes, letting silence fill the space between each breath you take. Then he stands, stretching his back slightly, and walks toward the round window on the far wall. He places his hand against it and looks out, though nothing specific seems to catch his eye. You know, he says in a voice softened by thought, there's something about night that makes the past feel close. Not the heavy parts, just the old echoes. He turns back to face you. For me, he continues, night reminds me of the times I helped people who could not speak their worries out loud. There was a fisherman once. Strong man, hands like rope. He came here after losing someone dear to him. He never told me who, never gave a name, but grief clung to him like smoke. The barber walks slowly toward you again. He didn't need words, he murmurs. He needed silence thick enough for his sorrow to breathe. So I lit the lamp, warmed the cloths, and let him sit while I worked on the tension in his shoulders. He pauses behind you, placing one hand on your shoulder. By the time he left, he still carried grief, but it didn't crush him anymore. He slides his hand down your back again. People think healing is about removing pain, he whispers. But often, it's just about giving the pain space to soften. He circles the chair slowly, observing the way your body has settled. Heavier, calmer, safer. The night has you now, he says quietly, and it's guiding you deeper. He stands behind you, places his palms lightly against the sides of your neck, and lowers his voice to a gentle murmur. The barber stands close behind you, his presence steady and warm, like a shelter against the quiet drifting through the room. The lamplight flickers softly, painting slow-moving shadows across the wooden floor. He takes a long, calm breath and lets it out, as though settling himself even deeper before guiding you further into the night. You're sinking beautifully, he whispers. Your breath has softened. Your shoulders have lowered. Even the small muscles along your neck, the ones that usually cling to tension, have eased their hold. He steps to the side with a measured quietness, picking up a small leather pouch from the table. The pouch is worn at the corners, softened from years of use. He unties the thin cord and pours its contents gently into his palm. Tiny, smooth stones, each one polished by hand, no larger than the tip of a thumb. These, he murmurs softly, are calming stones. Not magic, not ritual, just tools to help the body relearn stillness. He selects one and holds it to the light. When I was an apprentice, he says, my teacher told me that the body doesn't always respond to pressure alone. Sometimes it responds to weight, to warmth, to something solid resting in a place that's been carrying too much. He moves closer. I'm going to place one just above your shoulder blade, he whispers. Let the weight settle. Don't move toward it. Let it rest on you by itself. He gently lays the warm, smooth stone on your back. Its weight is small but noticeable, the kind of weight that reminds a muscle to let go. There, he breathes. Just breathe under it. Let the muscle soften from beneath. He takes another stone and places it at the base of your neck. This spot, he says, barely above a whisper, is where people carry silent worry. The kind that doesn't have a name. When the stone rests here, the mind slowly stops holding what it doesn't understand. He steps back, watching your posture change by fractions. Hardly visible, but enough for him to notice. You're responding well, he murmurs. And that tells me you've been carrying more than you let yourself feel. He retrieves another stone, slightly larger than the others. Now this one, he says, goes along the spine, not for alignment, just for grounding. He places the stone gently against the middle of your back, between your shoulder blades. When weight rests on the spine, he explains, the breath deepens without being asked. The mind follows the breath, and the thoughts fall into a slower rhythm. He watches your breathing shift. Deeper, smoother, flowing like water down a gentle slope. There it is, he whispers. Your body is telling me you're drifting into that quiet state where only half of you stays awake. He steps around the chair and kneels beside you, lowering his voice even further. I once worked on a scholar, he says. Brilliant mind. Always thinking, always analyzing, always pulling apart the world to understand it. But when he sat in this chair, his body trembled with exhaustion. The barber smooths his hand lightly along your upper arm. He couldn't turn his mind off, he says. Not even at night. His thoughts rushed like a river after a storm. So I taught him something. The same thing I'm guiding you toward now. He places one hand lightly on your upper chest, the other on your back, holding them there like calm anchors. Stillness doesn't come from force, he whispers. It comes from weight, from warmth, from giving the body permission to rest while the mind stops trying to lead. He removes his hands slowly, not disturbing the stones. The scholar returned many times, the barber continues. And each time he rested a little deeper. Eventually, he said he could feel moments of quiet even in the middle of the day. He carried those moments with him like soft echoes. He stands again, stretching his fingers gently before placing them on your temples. I'm going to press here, he murmurs. Just small circles. Don't try to follow the motion. Only breathe. His fingertips move in slow spirals, easing the tension hidden near your temples. The tension people don't notice until it's touched. Good, he whispers. Your pulse is steady here. That means you're drifting deeper. He continues the gentle movements for a long while, letting you sink further into that calming haze. Then he lowers his hands and steps behind you. The stones have warmed nicely, he says softly. I'll remove them one by one. He lifts the stone from your spine first. There, he murmurs. Feel how your back takes its shape again. Softer than before. He removes the second stone from your neck. Good. That one did exactly what it needed to. Finally, he lifts the stone from your shoulder blade. Your muscles didn't tense when I lifted it, he says quietly. That's a sign of deep release. He places the stones gently back into the leather pouch and ties the cord. Now, he says, moving toward the shelf again, I want to use something slightly different. Something meant for the breath. He pulls down a small wooden box, no larger than a palm. Inside is a bundle of dried herbs tied together with thin twine. This isn't for drinking, he says with a soft smile. It's for the air. He brings the bundle to the lamp's flame, not to burn it, but to let the edges warm just enough to release a faint, soothing scent into the room. The aroma is soft, earthy, calming. It's a blend used for easing the mind, he murmurs. Just breathe naturally. Don't try to inhale deeply. Let the scent reach you at its own pace. He waves the bundle slowly, letting the faint wisps drift around you. People underestimate the power of scent, he whispers. but it travels straight to the deepest place in the mind, where memories, fears, and calmness rest side by side. He watches as your breathing grows even softer. There it is, he says. That little shift. The one that tells me your body is preparing for deeper rest. He extinguishes what little heat remains on the herb bundle and sets it aside. You're sinking beautifully, he whispers again. The night is opening its quiet arms around you. He walks behind you, places his palms on your shoulders, and lets them rest there. Not massaging, not pressing, just resting. This part, he murmurs, is where stillness truly begins. He keeps his hands there, steady and calm, letting their warmth anchor you. After a long, gentle pause, his voice comes softly, almost like a breeze. The barber keeps his hands resting gently on your shoulders, letting the warmth sink deeper through the layers of muscle and breath. The room has slipped into a stillness so complete that even the flame of the lamp seems to sway slower, as if respecting the quiet settling between you. You're drifting well, he whispers, his voice soft enough to melt into the air. Your breath tells me you've reached that place where the world grows distant, where thoughts lose their sharpness, and where the body finally stops bracing for the next moment. He slowly lifts his hands, letting the warmth linger as he steps toward a narrow drawer beneath his table. He opens it carefully, the wood sliding with a faint, familiar sound. Inside lay several small brushes, thin, delicate tools with soft bristles, each one crafted to create the gentlest touch. He selects one with a wooden handle worn smooth by years of use. These brushes, he whispers, aren't for shaving. They're not for hair. They're for nerves. For coaxing the mind into a softer state. He moves behind you again, holding the brush between his fingers. I'm going to run this across the back of your neck, he murmurs. Very light. Almost like a whisper against your skin. He begins at the top of your spine, drawing the brush slowly downward. The bristles barely touch your skin, just enough to stir the surface, to soothe the nerves hiding beneath. This touch, he explains softly, was once used to calm people before treatments, when fear tightened their muscles, when their breath grew shallow. This helped loosen the tension that words could not reach. He moves the brush again, upward this time, tracing the curve of your neck with long, feather-light strokes. Notice how your breath changes, he whispers. How it lengthens on its own. How your shoulders sink a little deeper. The body always knows what to do when it's given quiet. He circles your shoulders with the brush, barely grazing the skin, letting the movement glide like drifting mist. You're responding beautifully, he says. Your body is falling into that gentle heaviness that only arrives when trust settles in. He brings the brush to your temples, sweeping lightly across them in small arcs. Here, he murmurs, is where the mind gathers its tightness. People don't even notice it. They carry tension behind the eyes, across the brow, along the temples. These strokes ease that. He continues, slow and rhythmic, the bristles moving like soft wind across your skin. You're sinking deeper, he whispers. I can hear it in your breath. I can feel it in the way your muscles loosen without effort. He sets the brush down and takes a step toward the shelf beside him, selecting a small wooden spoon filled with powdered herbs. This powder, he says softly, is not for drinking or eating. It's for scent. When placed near warmth, it releases a calm that drifts through the room. He sprinkles a tiny amount onto a flat stone near the lamp. The heat slowly awakens the aroma, earthy, warm, soothing like distant forests after rain. There it is, he whispers. Just let it fill the space around you. He waves his hand gently near your face, guiding the faint scent without forcing it. Your breath will take what it needs, he says. It always does. He returns to you and places his palms lightly against the sides of your head. Gentle, steady, grounding. I'm going to tilt your head just a little, he murmurs. Only enough to stretch the muscles at the base of your skull. He lifts slowly, tilting your head backward just a fraction. The stretch is subtle but deeply releasing. Perfect, he whispers. This area holds tension from long days, long thoughts, long worries. When it softens, the mind follows. He keeps your head supported for several moments, then lowers it again with utmost care. You're drifting deeper than before, he says softly. That's good. That's where the quiet begins to do its work. He moves behind you once more and places his fingertips against your upper back. Your body tells a story, he murmurs. Not with words, but with how it holds itself. And right now, it's telling me that you've walked through busy days, through noise, through the weight of things you didn't name. He presses lightly along your spine, feeling the small releases as each muscle yields. But the night is washing all of that away, he whispers. Not by force, by patience. He moves to your side, picking up a small thin cloth dipped earlier in warm herbal water. He lifts it carefully and drapes it across your shoulders. The warmth opens the pathways, he murmurs. It tells the nerves to soften. It tells the mind it doesn't have to stay alert. He smooths the cloth gently with both hands, spreading the heat evenly. People used to think, he says, that warmth chased away spirits of unrest. But really, it just quiets the parts of the body that cling to old tension. He stands still for a moment, letting the warmth sink deeper into your muscles. There was a traveler once, he begins softly, who came to me with a stiffness in his chest. Not from sickness, not from injury, just from holding his breath for too many days in a row. The barber shifts the cloth slightly, adjusting the warmth. He told me he hadn't slept fully in weeks. He said that every time he closed his eyes, he felt as though someone tapped him awake, as though the world wouldn't let him rest. The barber takes a slow breath, letting the memory settle before he continues. I didn't speak much. I didn't ask questions. I just guided him through the same quiet motions I'm guiding you through now. Warmth on his chest, touch along his temples, gentle pressure behind his shoulders. He lifts the cloth and lays it aside. And when he finally rested, it was like watching a stone sink under still water. Slow, steady, inevitable. He reaches toward a shelf and takes down a wooden cup filled with warm oil. I'm going to use a little more warmth, he whispers. Not much. Just enough for your body to let go of the last bit of resistance. He dips his fingers into the oil and rubs them together until they glisten. Now breathe normally, he says gently. Nothing forced. Just let the night guide you. His fingers glide across the back of your neck, warm and slow. He traces the lines of muscle with a tenderness rarely given in daylight hours. There, he murmurs. Your pulse is calm. Your breath is steady. This is where the deeper quiet begins. He moves his hands down your shoulders, spreading the warmth with slow, careful motions. Every person I've tended to, he whispers, has a moment where their body finally says, all right, I'm ready to rest. And you've just reached that moment. He steps back, letting the room breathe around you again. We're going further, he says softly, almost like a lullaby. We continue. The barber watches you for a quiet moment, as though listening to something deeper than breath. His eyes soften, not with pity, but with a kind of understanding that comes only from tending to many weary souls over many long years. You're drifting beautifully, he murmurs. Your mind has loosened its grip. The body follows the mind. But sometimes it's the other way around. Tonight, you're letting both move together. He steps to the side, opening a narrow wooden cupboard built into the stone wall. Inside, several small vials rest in shallow carved grooves. Their glass catches the lamplight. Amber, pale gold, soft green, muted violet. Each one holds a different extract, each with a subtle purpose. The barber picks up a vial filled with translucent green oil. This one, he explains softly, was made from herbs that only grow in the shaded parts of the forest. Their scent is gentle, but they help ease the deeper layers, the places where tension hides even from touch. He uncorks the vial with a quiet pop, and a faint, calming aroma drifts through the air. It's earthy, cool, like fresh leaves rubbed between fingers. "I'll only use a drop," he says. "That's all it takes." He places one drop on each wrist, then rubs it lightly, letting the warmth of his hands activate the scent. When he moves behind you, the fragrance follows him, settling around your shoulders like a soft cloak. "Let your breath meet it," he whispers. "Slowly, naturally." He rests his hands gently on either side of your shoulders. Not pressing, not shaping, simply letting warmth and scent mingle. Your muscles answer in small, slow waves, loosening, releasing, sinking. "That's it," he murmurs. "You don't have to try. You don't have to guide anything. Just let the quiet happen." He lifts his hands again and reaches for a small wooden bowl sitting beside the lamp. Inside is a thin layer of warm herbal paste, smooth and faintly shimmering. "This paste," he says, "was once used by healers before the night journeys, rituals meant for clearing the mind before dreams." He dips 2 fingers into the paste, warming it between them. "I'm going to place a little at the base of your neck," he whispers. "Not for healing, simply for settling." With slow, deliberate motion, he spreads the herbal paste at the point where your spine meets the skull. The warmth sinks through skin and muscle with surprising depth, so subtle yet so grounding that your breath naturally falls into a slower rhythm. "There," he murmurs. "You feel that? The heaviness, like a soft weight pulling you deeper." He presses lightly, letting the warmth settle in the pressure points. "The body knows what to do," he says quietly. "When given warmth, when given stillness, when given time." He wipes his fingers gently on a cloth and then steps toward a low wooden stool placed near the wall. From beneath it, he retrieves a small percussion instrument made of thin wooden bars tied with string. "When the mind drifts," he explains softly, "a steady rhythm helps guide it. Not music, not melody, just a gentle reminder that you're anchored." He sits behind you and lightly taps the instrument with his fingertips. The sound is soft, delicate wooden clicks, spaced evenly like distant footsteps on old floorboards. The rhythm is slow, steady, hypnotic. Tap. He adjusts the pacing with subtle variations, allowing your mind to float between the sounds, never fully catching them, never fully losing them. "This rhythm," he whispers between the taps, "helps the thoughts dissolve, helps the mind stop reaching, helps you drift into a quiet that feels safe." Your shoulders sink further. Your breath slides deeper. Time begins to blur into the soft wooden cadence. He stops, letting the silence swell back into the room. Thick, warm, velvety. "Good," he murmurs. "You're responding exactly as you should." He sets the instrument aside and moves again behind you. His hands hover just above your back, not touching, but close enough that you can feel the faint warmth radiating from his palms. "This is an old technique," he explains softly. "Not for pressure, not for rubbing, just for guiding energy downward, letting the mind feel where to release next." He moves his hands slowly, sweeping down the length of your back without making contact. Strangely, you feel the warmth anyway, like the air itself is brushing against your skin. "Your body is open now," he whispers. "Your breath follows without strain." This is the stage where even the deepest held tension begins to shift. He places his hands gently on your upper back, pressing just enough to ground you again. "Sometimes," he continues, "the body clings to old strain, not because it needs it, but because it forgets what life feels like without it. Tonight we remind it." His hands glide downward in 2 long, slow motions, smoothing the muscles beneath. With each pass, something eases. An ache you didn't name, a knot you didn't know existed, a pressure that had become too familiar. "You're doing well," he murmurs. "Better than most. Some people fight the quiet. Some fear it. But you trust it." He moves to your side and crouches slightly, bringing his voice closer. "I'm going to adjust the cloth again," he whispers. "You'll feel a brief coolness. Then the warmth returns even deeper. He lifts the cloth from your shoulders and dips it into the herbal basin. When he lays it back onto your skin, the heat spreads with a softness that almost melts into you. There it is, he breathes. That's the warmth that loosens even the hidden places. He smooths the cloth gently, pressing it into the contours of your shoulders, your upper back, your neck. You're letting go beautifully, he says. I knew you would. He pauses, letting the warmth soak through, letting silence fill the room once more. Then quietly, there is one final layer we will reach tonight, he says softly, almost ceremonially. A layer deeper than breath, deeper than muscle, deeper than thought. He steps behind you again, placing his fingertips lightly at the base of your skull. When we move into that layer, he whispers, your body will feel as though it's sinking into the night itself. Not falling, not slipping, just drifting. He holds his fingers still, letting the anticipation itself work through you. And when you're ready, he murmurs, we'll go there together. He waits beside you for a moment, watching the rhythm of your breath settle into something slow, natural, unforced. The lamplight glows warmly across the room, shimmering faintly against the bowls, vials, cloths, and tools that line his work table. Nothing moves except the faint sway of the flame and the soft rise and fall of your chest. Good, he murmurs, his voice low and velvety in the quiet room. Your breath found its own pace. That means you're ready for the deeper part. He steps behind you again, the floorboards offering a soft creak beneath his weight. Not loud. Just a gentle reminder that the world outside your drifting thoughts still exists, still holds space for you, still keeps you safe. His presence settles behind you like a warm shadow. You might notice, he says softly, that the air feels thicker now, heavier but in a comforting way. That's the body preparing itself. It knows what's coming. He places his fingertips against the sides of your neck, just below the ears, feeling the subtle warmth pulsing there. He presses lightly, not enough to move muscle, just enough to remind your nerves where they are. This part, he continues, is for the tension you've carried the longest, the kind that sits behind the mind, tucked deep, the kind your body tries to protect. His fingers begin to glide downward, tracing the line where neck meets shoulder. Low, careful, reverent. The oldest records we kept, he whispers, say that this motion frees the joints of thoughts, not the joints of bone. Strange old words, but they hold truth. He presses slightly deeper, letting the warmth of his hands seep into the tight fibers hidden beneath the skin. The sensation travels through you like the first moments of sinking into a warm bath. Gradual, enveloping, soothing from the inside outward. You feel that, he asks softly. That warmth spreading outward. That's your body agreeing to let me work deeper. He draws his hands down your shoulders in long, steady strokes, each one releasing something you didn't realize you were holding. You're doing beautifully, he murmurs. Every breath is softer than the last. He pauses behind you and reaches for a small jar made of opaque clay. Its lid is tied with a thin strip of cloth. He unties it slowly, so the sound of the knot loosening fills the quiet room like a whisper. Inside is a thick balm, smooth, pale, lightly fragrant. This balm, he says, comes from a mixture of roots and leaves that the old healers prized. They said it softens the spirit before rest. I've seen it calm the most anxious of travelers, the most troubled of wandering souls. He warms a small amount between his palms until it becomes silky. Then he places his hands at the center of your upper back, just below the shoulders. The warmth is immediate. The scent is faint and comforting, earthy, herbal, slightly sweet. I want you to imagine, he whispers as his hands begin slow, circular motions, that the warmth is melting through layers, like snow softening under the first touch of spring. His circles widen gradually, easing across the width of your back. Each motion drifts into the next, with no breaks, no rush, no sharp edges. This is where people store what they can't speak, he says softly. Here, in the back, in the silent parts. His hands glide lower, smoothing muscle and quieting places you didn't know were tight. He works with the knowledge of someone who has tended countless bodies, countless stories, countless burdens. You've carried much, he says gently. But not all of it belongs to you. Some of it can fall away tonight. He continues the slow circles, then shifts to long downward strokes, guiding tension downward and outward. You're softening, he whispers. Your body is letting go in waves now. Not piece by piece, but whole sections at a time. He moves slightly to your left, placing one hand at your spine and one hand at your shoulder blade. He presses in opposite directions, one grounding, one guiding, just enough to create a gentle releasing stretch. This technique, he explains, helps the ribs settle. When the ribs settle, the breath deepens on its own. And when the breath deepens, the mind quiets. He repeats the motion on the other side, slow and steady. You might feel a tingling, he says quietly, or a lightness like air moving through places that were tight before. That's normal. That's good. He shifts his hands to your lower back, pressing with soft, steady pressure that travels through muscle and into bone. Here is where long journeys leave their mark, he says, voice barely above a whisper. Every step you've ever taken, every road you've walked, it all settles here. His palms warm the muscles, coaxing them to loosen, to lengthen, to rest. When these muscles soften, he continues, the whole body follows. Everything unwinds. He works slowly, carefully, as though shaping warm clay. And with every motion, your breath deepens in a way that feels effortless, like your body is remembering how to breathe as it once did. After a long, unhurried while, he steps back and lets silence fill the room again. He watches the way your shoulders rise and fall, the quiet stillness settling around you like a cloak. You're ready, he whispers finally. Ready for the part that comes next. A part few ever experience fully awake. He moves behind you once more and places his hands gently on either side of your ribs. I want you to follow my breath, he says softly. Just listen. He inhales slowly, deeply, and your body follows without thinking. He exhales gently, steadily, and your breath mirrors his. Again, low, softer. There, he murmurs. Your breath is syncing with mine. That means your mind is slipping into a shared rhythm. That's how the deeper quiet begins. He places one hand on your upper back, just between the shoulders, and the other on your chest. Not touching skin, just hovering close enough for you to feel the warmth. Let go, he whispers. Let everything fall into the breath. The lamps flicker softly. The room seems to dim. The quiet deepens. You're drifting perfectly, he says. And soon, very soon, we go even deeper. He stands behind you in the soft lamplight, both hands hovering just above your upper back, close enough for warmth to drift downward in a gentle wave. The air in the room feels thicker now, warmed not just by flame and herbs, but by the quiet presence he holds around you like a protective curtain. You've reached the threshold, he murmurs. Many never make it this far. They stay in the upper layers where thoughts still cling. But you, your breath shows that you're ready to step into the deeper calm. His fingers lower, barely grazing your back as he traces a slow line down your spine. Just the lightest touch, enough to awaken a tingling warmth that follows the path of his hand. Your spine, he says softly, is like the river through a valley. Everything flows along it, fear, strength, memory, calm. When we guide that flow, the whole body listens. He places his palms at the center of your back, stacking one hand over the other. The pressure is gentle, steady, grounding. I'm going to press here, he whispers. Just a little. Just enough for the breath to settle at a lower place inside you. He leans in slightly, the warmth from his hands deepening, spreading through your ribs, your chest, your stomach. It's not a heavy pressure, just enough to guide your breath downward. There, he murmurs. Feel that. The breath falling. Settling. warming the space behind your ribs. That's exactly what we want. He keeps his hands there for a long, unhurried moment, letting your breath naturally adjust. Your body responds with small releases, tiny softenings, subtle shifts, like knots dissolving into nothing. Good, he whispers. Your body remembers how to do this, even if the mind forgot for a while. He slides his hands outward, smoothing across your ribs with slow circular strokes. Each circle widens gradually, drifting toward your sides, then toward your back again. As the ribs soften, he explains in a voice as warm as the lamplight, the mind drops deeper inside the body. That's why this part feels heavier, as though the world is moving slower around you. His hands glide upward, tracing gentle motions along the muscles between your ribs, places most people never notice until a skilled healer reaches them. These tiny muscles, he says, carry quiet tensions, the kind that hide beneath breath and posture, the kind that echo old stress, old worry, old nights where sleep took too long to arrive. He presses lightly, just enough to coax them open. Let them soften, he whispers. Let them remember rest. Your breath grows deeper, slower, like a tide settling after reaching its high point. He steps to your side and lifts your arm with care, supporting it at the elbow and wrist. I'm going to loosen the muscles here, he says softly. The ones that tighten when you reach, when you hold, when you carry. He rotates your arm slowly, so slow that it almost doesn't feel like movement at first. The joint sighs quietly, and a warm looseness spreads from your shoulder down to your fingertips. There it is, he murmurs. A release that travels a long path. He massages along the inside of your arm, his fingers tracing the long tendons and soft tissues that run from shoulder to elbow, then elbow to wrist. His touch is gentle but purposeful. These areas tell the stories of your days, he says softly. All the moments you carried more than you should. Let them quiet now. He repeats the motion on your other arm. Slow rotation, gentle pressure, long downward strokes. Each movement seems to coax another layer of softness into your body. When he lowers your arm back to your side, it settles with a weight that feels pleasant, secure, surrendered. You feel heavier now, he whispers. Not tired, just ready to let the deeper calm take over. He moves behind you again, placing both hands on your shoulders. Not pressing, not shaping, simply resting them there like warm stones. This, he says, is the quiet before the deeper drift. The moment just before the body sinks into that warm, silent place where everything feels distant but safe. He lets silence settle around you for a moment. His hands still, your breath steady. Then he lifts one hand and moves it toward the back of your neck, fingers brushing softly against the base of your hairline. Here, he whispers, is where the waking mind holds on the tightest. When we loosen this point, the mind lets go. He presses with slow circular motions, tiny circles that radiate upward, then downward, then outward. The sensation is calming, hypnotic. Let it happen, he murmurs. Let the thoughts drift. Let the body sink. Let the quiet spread. The circles widen, drifting across the sides of your neck, then gliding down toward the tops of your shoulders. He presses with a little more depth. Not enough to disturb the calm, just enough to coax the deeper tension out of hiding. These muscles, he explains softly, tighten when you look toward the future, and when you look over your shoulder into the past. Tonight, neither direction matters. Only this moment, only this breath, only this quiet. Another layer melts away. Your shoulders lower by a fraction. Your neck softens under his touch. Beautiful, he whispers. You're allowing the calm to settle exactly where it needs to. He steps away briefly, returning with a small bowl of warm oil. The heat rises from it in delicate wisps that carry a faint herbal aroma. I'll use just a little, he says, dipping 2 fingers lightly into the bowl. Enough to let my hands glide without friction. Enough to reach the deeper layers without disturbing the softness you've found. He places his warm, oiled fingers at the sides of your skull, near your temples. The touch is feather-light. You might feel a warmth spreading behind your eyes, he whispers. That's normal. That's good. That's the mind releasing the last of its tension. He circles gently around your temples, smoothing outward, then upward along the sides of your head. These motions, he says quietly, have calmed countless people. Travelers, merchants, soldiers, children. Every one of them softened here. He drifts his fingers toward the top of your head, tracing slow, rhythmic lines that feel like gentle waves. You're drifting now, he murmurs, deeper than before, into a place where the body remembers rest and the mind remembers stillness. He pauses, letting the quiet thicken like soft night air. Soon, he whispers, we'll move into the deepest layer of all. He steps back, the warmth of his presence still lingering around you. But not until your breath leads us there. And now, friend, as you linger there in the doorway of my little shop, let the warm glow of the lantern settle gently across your eyelids, and just breathe for a moment. Because the night around us grows quieter still, and every little sound seems to soften into something almost musical. You can hear it too, can't you? That slow, even rhythm of the oil lamp sighing as its flame shifts. The faint rustle of cloth. The muted scrape of my thumb along the whetstone as I test its smoothness. All of it blending into a calm you can feel deep in your chest. Step closer. Yes, right there, because tonight I want to tell you about a moment in my life when the world felt strangely large and strangely small all at once. A moment when I began to understand that my hands, these hands that cut hair, shaved beards, drained bad humors, and stitched wounds, were not just tools of my trade, but instruments that held the fragile line between fear and hope. It happened late one evening, much like this one, when the streets outside my shop were quiet, still damp from a light drizzle earlier in the day. You know how the air gets after rain, right? A little cooler, a little cleaner, and somehow it carries sounds farther. Every footstep, every whisper, every cartwheel at a distance, it all feels like it travels on a silver thread straight to your ears. I remember that exact feeling, that exact stillness, as I stood near the doorway brushing hair clippings from my apron. I was tired, my shoulders a little stiff, my fingers faintly aching from hours of sharpening blades and steadying hands. I was thinking about closing for the night when I heard quick footsteps approaching. Not heavy ones, not dragging ones, but sharp, brisk, anxious ones. The kind of footsteps that mean trouble is close behind. A young apprentice, maybe 14, perhaps 15, burst into view. His cloak was muddied at the hem, and he clutched a cloth bundle against his chest like it might break apart if he loosened his grip. His eyes darted left and right before he approached me as though stepping inside would ease whatever fear gnawed at him. "Mr. Sir," he panted. "Please, please, I was told," they said. "You're the one with steady hands. You help people. You don't turn them away." I had heard that before. People talk. They whisper. They exaggerate. But in moments like this, those whispers become a strange kind of responsibility, one I've never taken lightly. I nodded, motioning him inside as I reached toward the lamp to brighten its flame a little. "What is it you carry there?" I asked softly. "Show me gently." His breath trembled as he unwrapped the bundle. Inside was a hand, a human hand, trembling uncontrollably. And attached to that hand was a young man, barely older than the apprentice, with his arm bound tightly with a piece of torn shirt. Blood had dried in dark, rusty streaks along the fabric. His face was pale, far too pale, and sweat beaded along his forehead even though the air was cool. He wasn't unconscious. Oh, I remember that. His eyes flickered open just long enough to look at me with a mix of fear and pleading. The kind of look that presses itself into your memory and never really leaves. I lowered my voice. "Easy now. Breathe slow just like this." I inhaled and exhaled gently so he could mimic the pace. "You're safe in here." The apprentice swallowed hard and whispered. He cut himself with a woodcarver's tool. Slipped while shaping a handle. "It went deep, sir. Real deep. I don't know what else to do." I could see the shaking wasn't from pain alone. No, it was from blood loss. His body was trying to cling to every bit of warmth it could still afford. With calm movements, I guided them both deeper into the shop. I had the apprentice set him in the chair near the hearth. The heat there would help, even just a little. The lantern's glow softened across the boy's features as I eased the cloth away from his injury. The wound, oh friend. I remember how sharp and clean it looked, which is sometimes more dangerous than a ragged one. Deep and slicing across the palm, it threatened to sever the tendons that control the fingers. The bleeding had slowed from the crude wrap, but without proper stitching, he'd likely lose the use of his hand. Maybe worse. I spoke gently, letting the rhythm of my voice steady the apprentice's breath and the injured boy's nerves alike. You came at the right moment. Sit close to him. Talk to him. Keep him awake. And then, with a quiet breath, I gathered my tools. You know, there's a sound a sharpened needle makes when it touches warm water. Tiny hiss barely there. That little whisper rose as I warmed the needle to purify it. Another soft sound followed. The gentle clink of my small iron scissors, the faint sliding of clean thread between my fingers. Everything felt more delicate in that moment, as though the air itself was listening. When I returned to the young man's side, I placed one hand on his wrist and the other on the back of his injured palm, ready to begin. His gaze met mine again, more awake now but frightened the way anyone would be at that age. Listen to my voice, I whispered. Think of steady breaths. Think of the warmth here in the room. Nothing more. And with the calm precision of years behind me, I began to stitch. Slow, steady. Each pull of the needle small, measured. The thread tightening just enough to bring the skin together without strangling the flesh beneath. The boy winced, but the apprentice held his good shoulder, whispering encouragement in a shaky voice that slowly grew stronger. Minutes passed. Quiet ones, soft ones, where the only sounds were my whispered instructions, the faint crackle of the hearth, and the gentle hum I always fall into when focusing deeply. That hum is something I've never quite been able to stop. It just happens. A simple string of notes, almost like a prayer without words. When the stitching was complete, I wrapped the hand carefully, binding it in layers of clean cloth so the wound could breathe but stay protected. He would need rest, warmth, and someone to help him keep the cloth dry. But he wouldn't lose the hand. Not tonight. The apprentice nearly collapsed with relief, and the boy let out a long, trembling breath that softened his whole face. And I remember thinking in that quiet moment, how strangely powerful simple acts can be. Thread, needle, steady hand, a voice softened with patience. In a world that could be harsh and uncertain, these small things could tip the balance back toward hope. I watched as the two of them prepared to leave. Slowly, carefully, the injured boy leaning on his friend. They thanked me with words that felt too large for what I had done, but I accepted their gratitude with a nod. When the door shut behind them, the shop felt larger somehow, emptier, yet filled with a lingering warmth. And I stood there for a long time, listening to the steady tick of cooling metal, the quiet lull of night settling back into place. Let yourself breathe softly now. Slowly. Feel that same calm lingering around you. The night isn't over, friend. There's much more I want to share with you. But only if you're ready. All right then, friend. Settle your shoulders again. Let the air move gently in and out of your chest, and let the glow of the lantern here drift softly around your thoughts. Because in the next part one begins in a moment when the night felt like it had curled its arms around my little shop, holding everything still, as though even the world outside was waiting to hear what would happen next. You're still standing there with me, aren't you? Or maybe sitting now, letting your weight sink comfortably as you listen. Either way, stay close. I want you to feel this next part not just as a story, but as a memory you could almost step into. After the two boys left with their bandaged hand and their nervous relief, the quiet settled in again. Deep, thick, gentle. You know the kind. Where the silence feels warm rather than empty. The lamplight flickered across the wooden walls of the shop, tracing soft shadows over the shelves lined with pots of salves, coils of thread, tiny jars of herbs, wooden bowls, and my carefully kept blades resting side by side. I took a moment to tidy my tools, letting my fingers move in slow, familiar motions. The needle was cleaned, the thread coiled neatly, the scissors set back in their place. There's a peace to these little rituals, something steadying in the idea that after chaos, order can return. Even the faint sound of metal touching would seem almost soothing, like a tiny note in a quiet lullaby. I remember brushing a bit of hair from the floor, just letting the broom glide lightly across the boards, when I heard another sound outside. This time not footsteps, but a soft tapping, very faint, very hesitant. Tap tap. It wasn't the knock of someone in panic. No, it was the kind of tap someone makes when they aren't sure if they're welcome, or if they should even dare to ask for help. I opened the door slowly, letting the hinges creak just a little. The street was wrapped in a dim softness, mist beginning to form near the ground, catching the lantern light in a pale shimmer. And standing within that mist was an older woman wrapped in a shawl that looked like it had seen many years of use. Her hands were clasped together, knotted by age and worry, and her eyes lifted to mine with a trembling hope. "Excuse me," she whispered, her voice no stronger than a falling feather. "They said you might still be awake. They said you don't turn people away." There it was again, that quiet responsibility that always seemed to find its way into this place. I stepped back, gesturing for her to come in. "You're welcome," I murmured, keeping my tone soft, as if speaking too loudly might frighten her off. "Tell me what troubles you." Her hands shook as she unwound the shawl from around her arms. Beneath it, pressed close to her chest, was a small child. A little girl, no more than 5 or 6, her dark hair sticking lightly to her forehead with sweat. Her cheeks were flushed, and her breathing. "Oh, friend!" Her breathing was fast, shallow, like she was struggling against something too heavy for her tiny body to hold. My heart softened immediately. "She has fever," the woman whispered, trying to keep her composure. She woke burning hot. And then she began to shiver. I tried everything I know. Cool cloth, warm broth, but she keeps drifting in and out. Please, I can't lose her. I reached out slowly, placing my fingertips lightly on the child's forehead. Her skin was warm, too warm, and yet she trembled beneath that heat. A strange dance of chills and fever all at once. I guided them further inside, toward the small bench near the hearth where the warmth wouldn't overwhelm her but would keep her from collapsing into cold. As they sat, I knelt beside them, keeping my voice soft, steady, unhurried. "Tell me how long she's been like this." "Since the afternoon," the woman said. "It came all at once. That wasn't unusual. Fevers in these times could rise like a storm. Sometimes they passed quickly. Sometimes they didn't. But panic never helped, and she already had enough of that clinging to her shoulders." I reached for a small bowl and poured in water from a jug. The coolness of it rippled gently under the lantern light. From a clay jar I took crushed willow bark, a bitter but helpful thing, and added it to the water. A small amount, just enough to help ease her fever. The older woman watched me with eyes that glimmered in the dim light, full of trust she wasn't sure she should give. But she gave it anyway. I lifted the cup to the child's lips, letting the rim touch her slowly so she could sense it before tasting. She swallowed weakly, little sips that felt like victories. "Good, good," I whispered. "Just a little more." The woman dabbed sweat from the child's forehead with her shawl, her hands shaking less now that she had something to do. And I sat beside them, watching the girl's breathing, counting each small rise and fall of her chest. Minutes passed. The kind of minutes that feel stretched thin, like they're holding their breath with you. Then the child made a tiny sound. Not a cry, but a soft exhale, as though the fever loosened its grip just enough for her to feel something like rest. Her trembling slowed. Her muscles stopped tensing with each breath. And in that moment, I saw the woman close her eyes in relief, just for a heartbeat, before opening them again to watch her daughter with renewed hope. "You did what you could," I told her gently. "You came quickly, and that matters." She should have cool water at her lips every little while. And stay close to her. Let her hear your voice. Children sometimes fight fever better when they know someone is near. The woman nodded, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's face. Thank you. I don't know how to repay you. You don't need to, I whispered. Just keep her warm but not too warm. And come back tomorrow so I can see how she's doing. The child leaned lightly against her mother's shoulder. Her breathing still weak but steadier now. The woman gathered her into her arms, wrapping the shawl around them both once more. When she stood, she looked smaller somehow and taller at the same time, a mixture of exhaustion and renewed strength. Before she reached the door, she paused, turning back with a whisper. People say your hands are gentle, but they never mention your voice. It's like you stitch with that too. I didn't know what to say to that, so I simply nodded, offering a faint smile. When the door closed and the mist outside swallowed their shapes again, I stood there for a long moment, feeling the weight of the night settle deeper. Helping people, easing suffering, mending what can be mended. It gives you a strange quiet inside. A quiet that feels both heavy and peaceful. Take a slow breath now. Ease it out. Let the warmth of this moment drift into you the way steam drifts from a warm bowl of water. We are not done yet, friend. There's still a long path through this night, and more stories waiting in the dark corners of my memory. And now, to continue our journey, let your breath soften again. Just like the flame of the lantern that sways ever so slightly with each shift of the night air. Let your shoulders relax, your jaw loosen, and let your mind drift with me deeper into this quiet hour, where old wooden walls hold stories like dried herbs, carefully stored, waiting to release their fragrance when the moment is right. After the woman and her little girl disappeared into the mist beyond my doorway, the stillness that followed felt almost sacred. Not empty, not lonely. More like the room itself was taking a long, gentle inhale after witnessing something fragile that steadied itself once more. I let the silence settle, feeling the warmth of the hearth easing into my bones after the strain of tending to so many hands throughout the day. I walked slowly across the shop, fingers brushing lightly over the worn surface of my work table. Dried sprigs of lavender rested in a bundle nearby, and as I passed them, the faintest hint of their scent drifted upward. Soft, calming, familiar. It mixed with the warm wood of the shelves, the faint iron smell of the tools, and the lingering sweetness of herbs crushed earlier in the night. For a moment I simply stood there, letting all those scents blend into something that felt like home. Then, as the quiet stretched on, I moved to the small stool beside the window. The night air seeped in through the cracks, cool enough to raise the tiny hairs along my arms. Outside, the mist continued to drift lazily along the street, curling around the dimly lit stones and disappearing again into the shadows. The whole world seemed wrapped in a soft blanket of quiet fog. I don't know how long I sat there. Minutes, maybe longer, just listening to the night breathe. There's something deeply calming about those muted sounds. The sway of an old sign hanging from a shop post down the lane. The occasional distant hoof against cobblestone. The flutter of a moth brushing its wings near the lantern glass. Sound gentle. Each one spaced far apart. Each one giving the mind just enough rhythm to fall deeper into calm. But that peace shifted again when I heard something faint. So faint I almost mistook it for the rustle of the fog. Voice. Not sharp. Not panic. Just unsure. Calling out softly. Hello. Are you still awake in there? I stood and walked to the door, opening it with care. And there, at the edge of the lamplight, stood a man who looked like he had walked a long, long road. His cloak was heavy with dampness. His boots caked with mud that cracked at the edges where it had started to dry. His shoulders sagged beneath the weight of exhaustion, and yet he held himself as someone trying not to seem overly desperate. He lifted one hand in a small, almost embarrassed gesture. I hope I'm not disturbing you. You're not, I murmured, stepping aside. Come in from the cold. He hesitated, just for a second, as though stepping into any building required courage he wasn't sure he still had. Then he crossed the threshold, letting the warmth of the lamp and the hearth wash over him. As the door closed behind him, he exhaled with a heaviness that suggested he had been holding that breath for far too long. What brings you at this hour? Asked gently. He reached up and removed the glove from his right hand, slowly, carefully, as though peeling away layers of something more than fabric. And when the glove slid free, I saw the problem immediately. His fingers were swollen, stiff, and reddened, as though trapped in a vice of their own making. The skin around the knuckles was stretched tight, shiny in the lamplight. He noticed me looking and lowered his eyes. "I've been traveling," he said quietly. "Too far. Too long. Carrying too much. My hand, it started aching days ago. Then the stiffness came. Then the swelling." He swallowed, his voice tightening. "I can't close my fist anymore." I motioned him toward the chair near my tools and took a seat opposite him. "Let me see it." He offered his hand with the guarded reluctance of someone who had suffered through worse pains and feared this one was the herald of something grave. I cradled it gently, as though holding a delicate piece of pottery. The heat radiating from it was unmistakable, an inflammation fed by exhaustion, cold, and overuse. "Does it hurt when I press here?" I asked softly, touching the swollen ridge above his knuckles. He winced. "Yes. And here." Pressed a bit lower. A sharper inhale. "More there." I nodded, loosening my grasp. "You've strained the tendons. Overworked them until they swelled against the joints." My voice stayed low, calm as I explained. "It's not permanent, but it will take rest. And care." The man looked down, shame passing over his face. "I can't rest. Not yet. I have farther to go." I could hear the sincerity in his words, and also the weight behind them. Some task not yet complete, some promise unfulfilled. But the body does not wait for such things. Simply breaks when pushed too far. "You need warmth," I told him softly. "And wrapping. And movement that is slow, gentle, patient. Otherwise you may lose full use of your hand for much longer." He nodded, though the reluctance in his posture told me he didn't want to accept the truth. Even so, he watched quietly as I warmed a small pot of herb-infused oil over the hearth. It filled the air with a grounding scent, earthy, a little sharp, and deeply soothing. When it reached the right temperature, I poured some into my palms, rubbing them together until the warmth became steady and even. Then I took his hand again, slowly, cautiously, so he would feel no sudden pain. The moment my thumbs pressed lightly into the tight muscles, he closed his eyes, letting out a sound halfway between relief and ache. I worked with gentle circles, coaxing the tension to ease, letting the heat of the oil soften the swollen tissues. The room fell quiet except for his breath and the faint crackling of the fire. His fingers twitched now and then, but the stiffness gradually loosened beneath my touch. "You have a careful way about you," he murmured after a while. "Not many do." I smiled faintly. Hands learn patience when they're asked to mend what others fear may be broken. He opened his eyes, looking at me with something like gratitude. Deep, quiet, not easily spoken. When the treatment was done, I wrapped his hand in clean cloth, binding it firmly but not tightly. "You'll need to keep it warm," I said gently, "and avoid strain for several days. Even if the road calls you." His breath shook just slightly. "I'll try. Try harder than try," I replied softly, but with a calm firmness. A small smile curved his lips before fading back into the fatigue etched across his face. He stood slowly, testing the comfort of the bandage, flexing his fingers just enough to feel that the pain had eased. "Thank you," he whispered. "Truly." When he left, the fog swallowed him just as it had swallowed the others who passed through this quiet night. And once again, the shop fell into peaceful stillness. The lantern flickered. The hearth hummed. And I felt the night continuing to open around me, waiting for the next soul who might wander in with fear in their eyes and hope in their hands. Take another slow breath now. Let it melt through your shoulders. Let the calm settle deeper into your chest. There is more to walk through together, friend. The night is not finished, and neither are the stories it carries. To continue our journey, friend, let yourself relax again. Let the sounds of this little shop settle into you like warm cloth laid gently across your shoulders. The night beyond the window has grown even quieter now, the kind of quiet that feels almost unreal, as though the whole world has paused its breath so we can move slowly through this memory together. After the traveler disappeared into the fog, carrying his newly wrapped hand with cautious hope, I closed the door behind him and leaned my back lightly against the wood. The faint vibrations of the night pressed softly through the panels. A distant creak, a whisper of wind, the soft sigh of the lantern flame fluttering near the wall. My own hands felt warm still, the scent of herb oil lingering faintly along my fingers. I rubbed my thumb along the edge of my palm, reminding myself of the work that had passed through these walls tonight. A wounded boy, a fevered child, a weary traveler. Each one had brought a different kind of pain, and each one had left a different shade of quiet behind. The shop felt like it held all their stories at once, layered in the air the way dust settles on old beams, soft and familiar. I turned toward the hearth again, stirring the embers just a little so their glow didn't fade. The fire gave off a warm crackle, small but steady, like a comforting whisper in the dimness. Its glow cast golden light against the jars on the shelves, making their contents shimmer faintly. Powdered bark, dried leaves, crushed berries, little stones used for grinding mixtures. Every one of them had a purpose. Every one had been used with care. Sometimes I think the shop breathes with me. When the room is busy, it feels alert, awake, lively. And when the night stretches empty like this, it feels drowsy, content, like a cat curling itself beside a warm fire. I moved to my chair, letting myself sit for the first time in what felt like hours. A gentle sigh escaped me, not from weariness alone, but from the fullness that comes after helping someone who truly needed it. That feeling, it settles deep. That quiet satisfaction is the reward that never cheapens, no matter how many nights pass. Outside, the mist drifted slowly across the street, shifting in pale ribbons like worn silk. It softened the lamp glow, turning every light into a halo. If you looked long enough, you could almost imagine figures walking through it. Ghosts, memories, shadows of the past blending into the present. And then, as if on cue, I heard something stirring in the fog. Not a cry, not footsteps, something different. A faint clinking sound, rhythmic and gentle, like tiny bits of metal tapping together. It came closer, slow and steady, not hurried and not hesitant. I leaned forward slightly, curious, letting my hand rest near the latch of the door. Then came a shuffle, another clink, and then a soft, breathy cough. When I opened the door, the fog parted just enough to reveal a figure. An older man, stooped slightly, wearing a cloak dotted with raindrops left over from earlier in the evening. A small metal cage, no larger than a loaf of bread, hung from a loop on his belt. Inside the cage, tiny tools clinked softly against one another with each step he took. He removed his hood slowly, and I could see his weathered face. Deep lines carved around his eyes, a gray beard trimmed neatly but uneven from age. He looked tired, but not from sickness. This was the tiredness of someone who had lived through enough years to have seen both kindness and cruelty. He met my eyes with a long, thoughtful look. "Evening," he rasped gently. "You're still open." "I'm here," I replied in a quiet voice. "Come inside. The night's cold." He stepped in, moving carefully, each gesture deliberate. When he sat down on the bench near the lamp, he let out a small groan under his breath, the kind of sound someone makes when every part of the body feels heavier than it used to. "What troubles you?" he asked. He lifted his right hand, unwrapping a strip of cloth that covered his palm. When he pulled it away, I saw the problem. A deep splinter of wood lodged just beneath the skin, swollen around the edges. Not large, but long, driven in at an angle sharp enough to dig into the flesh whenever he bent his hand. "Must have been agony. Been carving handles all week," he muttered. "Didn't notice it go in till the swelling started. Figured I'd pluck it out myself, but—" He exhaled softly. "My eyes aren't what they were. My hands shake more these days." I nodded gently. "Let me take a look." He set his hand on the table with the vulnerability of someone who has no choice but to trust. I lit a smaller lamp to brighten the area, letting its soft light fall across the injured palm. The splinter glinted faintly, catching the glow. You came at the right time, I murmured. If it stayed in longer, it could have festered. He gave a rough little chuckle. I've had worse than a splinter fester in my day. Even so, I said softly, we'll deal with it. I warmed another small cup of clean water, adding a pinch of herbs that helped draw out heat and soften the skin. As I worked, he watched me with a look that felt almost reflective, not fearful, not impatient, just quietly observing, as if my motions reminded him of something old and familiar. You've got a gentleness about you, he said after a while. Rare to see it last as long as it has. I smiled faintly but didn't answer. Instead, I dipped a cloth into the warm herbal water and pressed it gently against his palm. He hissed slightly at the first touch, then relaxed as the warmth seeped through. The splinter loosened just a bit beneath the heat, lifting enough for me to take hold with a fine pair of tweezers. I steadied his wrist with one hand, speaking softly. Breathe slow, I whispered. In and out. He followed my guidance, his breath easing into a slow rhythm. And with steady fingers, I removed the splinter in one smooth motion. He didn't cry out, though he stiffened briefly. When the splinter came free, I dropped it into a dish, a tiny clink sounding as it landed. The man exhaled with relief, shoulders sagging as the pain eased. Feels like a thorn lifted from my whole arm, he murmured. I cleaned the wound carefully, binding it in clean cloth, leaving enough space for air but enough pressure to keep swelling down. His eyes softened as he watched. You treat strangers like old friends, he whispered. Not many like that anymore. I shook my head gently. Pain is pain. No one deserves to feel it alone. He gave a small nod, absorbing those words with a quiet heaviness. When he stood again, he moved with more ease. The fog outside waited for him like a familiar blanket. Before stepping out, he paused in the doorway. You've done a kindness, he said softly. More than you know. Then he vanished into the mist, leaving only the fading sound of his tool cage clinking gently with each step. I watched the fog roll in behind him, letting the silence settle back into my little shop. Soothing, warm, almost drowsy. Take a breath now. Let it soften through your chest. Let the calm spread through your limbs like quiet firelight. The night still has more stories, friend. And you're still welcome here beside me. To continue our journey, let your breath slow again, because the lantern light inside this little shop seems softer than usual tonight, as if it wants to cradle you just as carefully as I cradle the tools resting on my table. The hour feels suspended, and the quiet outside has deepened. Only the faint roll of a wagon will far away. Then nothing. Just us and this simple work, and the hush of an old world that still smells of pressed linen, warm herbs, and glowing oil lamps. I stand in the center of my small room, wiping the last sheen of oil from the brass bowl where I keep my leeches. They twist slowly, their little bodies curling and uncurling like ribbons stirred by a breeze. I speak to them softly, not because they understand, but because everything in this shop deserves gentleness. Even these tiny creatures, strange and patient, who have helped spare many souls from the fever that once tried to claim them. Beside the bowl rests the mortar, its rim stained with the earthy green of crushed rosemary, the deeper brown of dried bark, the faint dusty yellow of powdered chamomile. I lean over it for a moment and breathe in. That scent, it always brings me back. Back to a time before I had steady hands, before I knew what it meant to carry another person's pain for a single night and return it to them as relief by morning. The door shivers in its frame with a soft knock. Not hurried, not fearful. A gentle tapping as though someone timid stands outside. I smile to myself and lift the latch. There she is, Ellen's younger sister, barely more than a child. She holds a tiny cloth bundle to her chest, her eyes round and glistening with worry. Not for herself, I can tell immediately. For something or someone she carries. Come in, I whisper, stepping aside, letting her feel the warmth of the shop wrap around her like a blanket. She hesitates only a second before slipping inside, clutching the bundle closer. She unfolds the cloth with careful fingers. Inside is a little bird, feathers ruffled, one wing trembling weakly. A robin, no larger than a curled hand. Its breath is shallow, but present. I kneel beside her and she kneels too, placing the small creature onto my waiting palm. Her voice is fragile. He fell from the beam above our door. He wasn't moving at first. I didn't know where else to go. I nod slowly, steadying the tiny heartbeat beneath my fingertips. You did well, I murmur. Even the smallest life deserves care. I carry the robin to my work table, the girl close behind me. It's not the kind of patient most people expect me to treat, but life is life. And tonight the shop feels like it was meant to take in one more fragile breath. The little creature has no broken bones. That much I can tell as I touch along its wing. But shock can steal more strength than injury ever could. I warm a cloth, lay it gently over the bird's body. Its eyelids flutter, then rest again. The child stands beside me, both hands clasped nervously at her chest. Will he live? I answer softly. He's frightened. Just frightened. Let him feel warmth and calm for a little while, and the spirit inside him may steady itself again. She nods, trusting every word, and the way she watches the bird reminds me of the way I once watched over my mother when illness drained her color. That same quiet hope. That same aching helplessness. And maybe that is why I speak more gently than usual, not just for the bird, but for the small heart beside me. I show her how to wet her fingertip and let one drop of water touch the robin's beak. The tiny tongue flickers out, just barely. She gasps softly, her fear easing like frost melting on a window. We'll keep him warm, I say, folding another cloth and lighting another small oil lamp beside the table. That's all he needs for now. She lowers herself into the nearest chair, shoulders relaxing. I return to my tools, though my eyes linger on the little robin now glowing in the orange lamplight, its breath steadier than before. Strange how such a small creature can change the whole feeling of a room. The girl watches me prepare another mix of herbs, this one for a man who might arrive later tonight. A feverish one, judging by the message I received earlier. She tilts her head, studying every motion. You do everything so slowly, she whispers, almost as though she is afraid to break the spell. Like you're afraid the air might shatter. I pause, then smile with a soft exhale. If my hands move too quickly, I tell her, the world around me moves too quickly too. And the people who come here, they don't need speed. They need steadiness, warmth, a place where nothing rushes. She nods, as if the truth of that settles into her bones. Outside, a breeze moves through the narrow street. It presses against the shutter for a moment, letting a faint hum pass through the cracks. It sounds almost like a lullaby made of wind and wood. The girl draws her knees up to her chest. It's quieter here than anywhere else. It's supposed to be, I murmur, crushing another sprig of herbs. Many people step through that door with the loudest storms inside them. If I want to help them calm those storms, then the room needs to feel like the world has slowed to a whisper. She leans her cheek against the back of the chair, her eyes tracing the flicker of the flames. The robin shifts a little under its cloth, and she smiles again. Small but true. I step over and lower the lamp flame slightly so it won't grow too hot. My shadow moves across the wall like an old memory, stretching and folding, almost like a silent companion. Minutes pass, or maybe more. In here time changes its mind often. At last the girl asks, do you ever get scared? When someone's sick or hurt? When you don't know if you can fix them? I rest my hand on the table, fingers tapping lightly beside the bird. Fear visits everyone, I say gently. But I let it sit quietly in the corner. It can watch, but it cannot guide my hands. She thinks about that, her gaze drifting back to the robin. So you keep working, even if you're afraid. Yes, I whisper. Because someone is always hoping I won't give up. A soft silence embraces us again, warm, deep and still. And somewhere in that silence, the tiny robin gives a trembling chirp, weak but clear. The girl gasps, her whole face lighting like a candle being touched by flame for the first time. That, I say, smiling softly, is the sound of life returning. To continue our journey, breathe slowly as you return to the small room with me, where the night has deepened just enough to turn the shadows a shade darker, and the warmth of the oil lamps feels like a gentle hand resting on your shoulder. The girl is still sitting near the table, watching the tiny robin as if her whole spirit is anchored to its shallow breaths. The little creature trembles once more under its warm cloth, then settles, like a drifting ember finally finding a safe place to rest. Its fragile chirp still echoes faintly in the room, and each faint movement slows the girl's worry a little more. I prepare another herbal mixture, this one for the fevered man I expect before the next moonrise. Yet even as I grind the leaves, I can't help casting small glances toward the child and her bird. Some nights, the work in this shop feels heavier, full of wounds and sickness and hard decisions. But tonight feels like a reminder of gentler duties. A reminder that not all healing needs blood or trembling hands. Sometimes it needs only warmth, patience, and a quiet room. The soft scrape of my pestle draws the girl's attention. She slides off the chair and steps closer, her gaze curious now rather than fearful. "What's that one for?" she whispers. "Cooling the body," I murmur, letting the rhythmic grinding slow. "For someone fighting heat where heat should not be." She nods, her eyes following each of my movements as if she is memorizing them. "Did you learn all this from someone?" she asks. "Or did you just know?" I take a breath before answering, because the memory arrives like a warm tide. "There was an older man," I say softly, keeping my voice steady. "A barber-surgeon who worked in a narrow shop much like this one. I watched him for many years. Watched the way he touched the injured with such care. Watched how he made people believe, even for a moment, that they were safe." The girl leans forward slightly, her voice barely a whisper. "Was he kind?" "He was gentle," I say, pausing the grinding. "And he believed that the hand that heals should never hurry, and never strike fear. That every life, no matter how small, no matter how uncertain, deserves calm." Her eyes drift again to the robin. "Like him." I smile faintly. "Yes, like him." The door gives a soft creak as the wind presses against it, and for a second the flame in the corner lamp leans sideways, stretching its shadow across the floor. I steady the wick with a small twist, lowering the light so the bird can rest. The girl shivers slightly at the breeze, so I take a blanket from the corner and drape it around her shoulders. She looks up at me with wide eyes, surprised by the gesture. "You looked cold," I say simply. Her small face softens, and she pulls the blanket closer as she returns to the chair, tucking her feet beneath her. A moment passes, then another. The kind of quiet where you can hear the faint heartbeat of the room itself, the settling wood, the slow tick of droplets in the water basin, the hush of our breathing in sync with the lamp's gentle flicker. Inside that calm, the robin stirs again. It lifts its head this time. The girl gasps, in the quiet way a child does when she's afraid to scare something fragile. She leans forward slowly, barely breathing. The bird blinks once, then chirps, a sound brighter than before. Its wings quiver, the cloth lifting slightly with its movement, and its tiny body grows steadier with every breath. "He's waking," she whispers. "He's really waking." I set aside the herbs and walk to the table, watching the little creature lift itself just enough to peek from beneath the cloth. The warmth has returned to its feathers. Strength trickles back into its muscles like sunlight returning after a long night. "He's lucky you found him," I tell the girl. "Luckier still that you brought him here right away." Her cheeks flush with quiet pride. "Will he fly again?" she asks. I lower my voice so it hums gently in the lamplit air. "If he rests a little longer, yes. His wings remember the sky." A soft smile spreads across her face. Gentle, hopeful. The robin hops once. Just once. A small, careful hop, as if testing the world beneath its feet. Its claws cling lightly to the cloth, not yet trusting their strength fully. But its eyes are brighter now, alert, curious. The girl watches in awe. "He's brave. Every creature is brave," I whisper, "when it decides to keep living." Her eyes soften as she listens, and in that moment I see something shift in her. Some small part of her understanding what it means to care for something weaker than herself. What it means to carry fear and tenderness in the same breath. The robin chirps again, louder than before, and the sound echoes through the little shop like a tiny bell calling the night to attention. But then faint footsteps appear outside. Low, heavy, tired. The fevered man. The girl straightens, instinctively drawing the blanket closer. I touch her shoulder gently. "Stay there," I whisper. "The bird will be safe." She nods, settling back into her seat. The footsteps pause outside the door. A soft cough follows, weak, strained, unsteady. I move toward the door, feeling the cool wooden floor beneath my feet as I cross the room. The air shifts as I reach for the latch, preparing myself for whatever form exhaustion and pain might take tonight. For a moment I look back. The girl is watching me. The robin is warm beneath its cloth. The lamps glow softly, and the whole room feels like it is holding its breath. Then I open the door. A man stands there, wrapped in a worn cloak, sweat beading along his hairline despite the cold outside. His eyes are unfocused, his breath thick with heat. He sways slightly, gripping the doorframe. "Please," he whispers. "The fever, it will not break." I step aside, letting him enter the warmth. The moment he crosses the threshold, the room shifts. No longer just a refuge for a small trembling bird, but once again a place where human pain must be welcomed and eased. As he stumbles toward me, I guide him with steady hands. Hands that know how to calm storms. Hands that the old barber once taught to move slowly, softly, carefully. Hands that never rush. Hands that never forget their purpose. To continue our journey, let your mind step with me into this warm little shop, where the fevered man now sits heavily in the wooden chair near the wall. His cloak drapes across the floor like a fallen shadow, damp with sweat and the weight of exhaustion. The girl watches from her corner, clutching her blanket with one hand, the robin safely tucked under its warm cloth on the table beside her. The man's breath rattles slightly, each inhale pulling the warm air of the room deep into lungs that struggle to accept it. I kneel before him, not hurried, not worried, just present, steady and gentle. His eyes are cloudy with fever, but there is trust in them, the kind that appears only when someone enters a place where hope still lingers in the corners. "Your head feels heavy," I ask softly. He nods, barely able to keep his chin from falling to his chest. "Feels like fire, burning behind my eyes. I can't." His voice trails into a trembling cough. "Easy," I whisper. I place one hand against his forehead, the heat radiating into my palms like holding a stone left too long in the sun. His skin is slick, and the pulse in his temple beats faster than it should. I don't pull away. Instead, I rest my other hand lightly against the back of his neck, feeling the tension there, the way his body fights itself. He leans into my touch, desperate for anything cool, anything steady. The girl watches in silence, her wide eyes shifting between the man's trembling form and my calm movements. She seems smaller now, understanding something she didn't before. A different kind of fear, a different kind of courage. I rise and prepare a cloth dipped in the herbal mixture resting in the bowl near the window. The aroma lifts into the air. Cool, grounding, earthy. Mint, feverfew, a trace of willow bark. The scents soften the room's mood, turning the air itself into something the man can lean on. When I return to him, I gently press the cloth against his forehead. He exhales a shaking breath, relief edging into his expression like a faint light breaking through clouds. "That's better," he murmurs. I kneel again, steadying him with one hand. "Tell me, when did the fever begin?" He squeezes his eyes shut, thinking through the haze of pain. 3 nights ago, chills first, then the heat. I worked through it. I shouldn't have worked through it. He winces, clutching his ribs. No one chooses when sickness arrives. I remind him softly. You're here now. That's what matters. Behind us, the robin gives a soft, reassuring chirp. So faint, yet somehow perfectly timed. The girl glances at the table. then back to us, as if the tiny creature has become part of the night's gentle rhythm. I guide the man's hand to the cloth so he can hold it in place. Keep this against your skin. Let the herbs draw out the heat. He nods weakly, clutching the cloth with trembling fingers. A small basin stands nearby, filled with cool water. I prepare another cloth, wringing it slowly, letting the droplets fall into the basin with quiet, rhythmic taps. The sound fills the shop, echoing like soft rain on a silent evening. As I work, I speak in a low, calming tone, not just for him but for the entire room. Your body is fighting hard. Too hard. The fever wants to run wild, but we won't let it. The man shivers, then steadies. The girl finally musters enough courage to speak. Is he going to be all right? I glance over my shoulder at her, offering a soft nod. If we cool him little by little, and if he rests, yes. It may take the night, maybe longer, but yes. Her shoulders lower, the blanket sliding slightly as she relaxes. I turn back to the man and gently lift his hand so I can replace the cloth with a fresher, cooler one. His skin hisses softly at the relief, and he sighs, a long, tired exhale that seems to drain some of the fear from him. He whispers, "Your hands, they don't shake." "No," I murmur, smoothing a stray lock of damp hair from his forehead. Fear tries to make them shake. But I don't allow it. He looks at me, weary but grateful. How? I place a fingertip lightly against the cloth. By remembering that calm is not a feeling, it's a decision. Every time someone walks through that door needing help, I choose it again. His eyes close slowly, as if my voice is soft enough to lull even his fevered body into rest. The robin chirps again, louder this time, and its tiny wings flutter underneath the cloth. The girl gasps softly, half startled, half delighted. She leans closer to watch, her earlier worries now lifted like fog in morning air. "Even he's waking up more," she whispers proudly. I smile at her from across the room. Healing travels through a room like warmth. Sometimes the smallest creature senses it first. Her cheeks glow with quiet happiness. I return my attention to the man, whose breathing has grown steadier. His shoulders loosen, the tension melting out of them. The fever is still there, strong, stubborn, but his body doesn't fight against my touch anymore. He opens his eyes slightly, staring into the dim light. "I thought I'd collapse before reaching your door." "You didn't," I say softly. "And that tells me you're stronger than this illness." His throat works as he tries to swallow. I offer a cup of cool water, guiding it to his lips. He sips slowly, each swallow bringing a faint return of clarity to his gaze. He lowers the cup, whispering, "Thank you. That's what these hands are for," I murmur, resting the back of my fingers gently against his cheek. The lamps flicker softly, and the whole shop feels as though it is breathing with us. Slow, steady, alive. The girl shifts in her chair. "Does everyone come here at night?" she asks softly. I chuckle under my breath. Night is a strange time. Pain grows louder. Worry grows sharper. And sometimes, the darkness itself makes people seek out light. She nods, reflecting on the truth of it. The man leans his head back, the cloth cooling his fever inch by inch. He's not well yet, not by far, but his body is no longer spiraling downward. It is pausing, listening, accepting help. The night grows even quieter. The street outside is still, save for the occasional distant step echoing faintly off stone. The sound of the basin's dripping water mixes with the gentle chirps from the robin, creating a soft rhythm that wraps around the room like a lullaby woven from hope. I return to my herb table and begin preparing a stronger infusion, the kind that will help the fever break before sunrise if the man's strength holds. My hands move slowly, predictably, the way they always do. The girl watches, her eyes heavy with drowsiness but determined to stay awake. The man murmurs something incoherent, shifting slightly. "It's all right," I whisper across the space. "You're safe. You're being cared for. You're not alone in this." My voice blends with the warm air, low and steady, letting his mind sink into the calm. In the far corner, the shadows stretch a little deeper, like the night leaning in to listen. And for a moment, everything, the fever, the worry, the exhaustion, settles into a fragile peace. To continue our journey, let your mind ease back into the little shop with me, where the hour is growing late enough that the shadows feel thick and velvety, clinging to the corners like folded blankets. The air hums softly, part from the warmth of the lamps, part from the quiet breaths of the three souls gathered here. The fevered man rests with his head leaning back against the wooden chair, the damp cloth folded across his brow. His chest rises and falls in slow, heavy waves, each breath slightly steadier than the last. The heat in his skin has not vanished yet, but its fierceness has begun to loosen its grip. The sweat on his forehead now forms in gentle beads instead of frantic droplets. The girl, still wrapped in her blanket, rests near the table. The tiny robin is perched now, awake, its head tilted as if listening to every sound in the room. Its little claws grip the cloth softly, and its feathers puff just a bit, finding comfort in the warmth. I watch the bird for a moment, how its eyes follow me as I move, how its chest lifts quickly in small breaths. Even in its fragile state, there is a liveliness inside it that feels like a lantern flickering in a dark hallway. The girl notices too. She leans forward, whispering, "He looks stronger." "He is," I reply softly, preparing the next mixture in a small bowl. "Creatures recover in quiet places." She nods, as if she understands that fully now. I bring the bowl to the small stove, letting the herbs steep in the warmed water. A soft, earthy steam rises, curling in the air before fading. I swirl the mixture gently before carrying it toward the man. He opens his eyes just barely, looking at me as though emerging from a long, confusing dream. "Drink what you can," I whisper. He tries to lift his hand, but the strength isn't there yet. I steady the cup for him, helping the warm liquid reach his lips. He sips slowly, every swallow sinking deeper into the fever's tight walls. The girl watches quietly, her chin resting on her knees. The robin chirps once, soft, gentle, as if encouraging him. The man manages a few more swallows, then leans back again, breathing a little easier. "Feels cooling," he murmurs. "It will help your body fight," I answer, setting the cup aside. His eyelids drift shut. "I didn't think I'd make it." His voice cracks, distant. "The whole day, the world spun around me." "It's all right," I murmur. "You're here. Let the room hold you for a while." He nods faintly, slipping back into a half-sleep. I move around the shop in slow, deliberate motions, checking the lamps, adjusting the blanket around the girl's shoulders, setting another cloth in cool water. My hands glide gently from task to task, as though I'm tending to the pulse of the room itself. The girl hugs the blanket closer. "Can sickness take someone away that fast?" she asks, her voice wavering. "Sometimes," I say quietly, "if the fever climbs too high. But he came early enough. His strength isn't gone. It only needs guidance." She nods slowly, brushing her fingers against the cloth where the robin perches. I return to the man, changing the cloth on his forehead once more. His body responds with a faint sigh, grateful for the coolness. As I work, I speak gently, more to keep him grounded than to hear myself. Fever rises when the body tries to chase out illness. It burns what doesn't belong. But sometimes it burns too fiercely, and needs a hand to help calm it. The girl listens, her eyes softening. "So you're helping his body rest?" "Yes," I whisper. "Rest is a healer of its own." The room falls into a deep, warm silence then. One of those silences that feels alive, like the air itself is breathing. The man's breathing steadies even more, each inhale smoother, slower. His chest no longer strains with effort. Outside the door, a faint sound drifts through. A soft creak of a distant cartwheel, the muted murmur of someone passing, maybe a late traveler or an old vendor closing up for the night. The world outside moves slowly, gently, like a lullaby whispered through the narrow street. The girl shifts her weight and lets her legs stretch out in front of her. Her eyes blink slowly, sleep inching toward her like a quiet tide. "You can sleep," I whisper. She shakes her head. "I want to stay awake. Just in case." I smile softly. "Just in case what?" "In case he needs something," she says, glancing at the man. "Or the bird. Or even you." Her voice carries a sincerity that warms the space between us. "You have a gentle heart," I answer. "But you should still rest. Even the strongest hearts need sleep." She looks down, her fingers smoothing the edge of the blanket. "If I fall asleep, will you wake me if something happens?" "I will," I promise. She nods, trusting that simple vow. The robin hops once across the cloth, stretching its wings slightly, testing them without flying. They tremble, but not with fear. With recovery. With a small spark of energy returning. The girl watches, her eyes widening in awe. "Look at him. He's remembering himself," I whisper. The bird tilts its head, then looks at me, then at the girl, as though aware of every presence in the room. Its tiny heartbeat flutters beneath its feathers, strong and quick. I approach slowly, not wanting to startle it. The robin blinks once, then twice, then puffs its feathers and settles again. "He'll fly soon," I say. "But not tonight. His strength is returning drop by drop." The girl smiles with a kind of sleepy pride. I light another lamp near the window, dimming it to a soft glow. The room fills with a warm gold that settles into the wooden walls like a soft embrace. The shadows quiet themselves, sinking into the corners. As I move, the man mutters something incoherent in his sleep. His fever is still there, but no longer raging. As softened, it has surrendered its wildness. The herbs are working. His body is listening. I place a hand lightly against his wrist, feeling the pulse beneath my fingertips. It beats steadily now. Still warm, still taxed, but no longer pounding out of rhythm. The girl watches my face carefully. "Is he getting better?" I nod softly. "Yes. The fever is loosening. He may sweat through the rest of the night, but his strength won't slip away from him." She lets out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. For a while we simply listen, to the man's calm breathing, to the small rustle of wings, to the soft crackle of the lamp's wicks. The peace is deep and real, wrapping around us like a shared blanket. The girl's eyelids grow heavy again. She leans her head slowly against the back of the chair, curling a little toward the warmth. I let her rest. Another hour slips quietly through the room. An hour made of steady breaths, gentle light, and the small miracle of life returning in two very different bodies. The man shifts in his sleep, and the bird shifts in its warming cloth. The girl drifts into a dozing calm, and the night folds itself softly around all of us, like a guardian cloak drawn over tired shoulders. To continue our long, quiet walk through these lamplight memories, let me lower my voice again, slow and steady, as though I'm sitting on the old wooden stool beside you, my hands folded, the warmth of the forge fading behind us, the night stretching soft and wide around our shoulders. Here begins the final part of this long tale, yet not an ending, not truly. Just another dimly lit doorway, another breath in the cool air, another soft rustle of the past settling itself close enough for you to feel. Listen now. Let the rest of the world drift far, far away. The hour had grown late. So late the sky had lost even its deepest blues and traded them for the kind of stillness that only comes when the world forgets to turn. My shop was lit by just one oil lamp now, its little flame trembling as though it were getting sleepy too. I stood there a while, my hands hanging loose at my sides, my tools cleaned and wrapped in cloth, the faint smell of herbs still floating around the room like a gentle mist. There is something special about that hour, when even the walls of a place seem to relax. Maybe you can almost feel it with me now. The wood warming slightly from the day's work, the faint creak of the stool shifting, the quiet of the street outside settling like a soft blanket. I stayed there, breathing slow, feeling the weight of everything and nothing at once. And then light footsteps. Careful ones, hesitant, like someone unsure if they should knock. I didn't call out right away. Instead, I waited, letting that small tension settle over me like a thin veil. Sometimes the night brings wanderers. Sometimes it brings trouble. And sometimes it brings a message meant for you alone. A second later, a soft tap touched the door. Not a knock, just a tap. Barely there. I took in one last slow breath and stepped toward it, easing the latch open as quietly as I could. The door creaked, just a whisper, and there, framed in the faint lamplight, stood a figure wrapped in a dark cloak, hood low, hands gloved. Could not see a face. But I could feel the weight of their stare, the sharpness of their breath, the way they held themselves as though the night itself were chasing them. "May I enter?" The voice whispered, soft, steady, and carrying a kind of calm that didn't match the tension in their shoulders. I opened the door wider, motioning them in. They did not step quickly. They moved like someone afraid the floorboards might betray them. I watched closely, noticing little details. The slight favoring of the left foot, the stiffness in their right arm, the faint tremble in the fingers of their glove. Another person in need. Another soul carrying a story in their bones. When they reached the center of the room, they slowly removed their glove, revealing a hand wrapped in cloth, stained through in dark patches. I angled the lamp closer, the warm glow revealing more than the stranger intended. Deep cut, clean but long, not fresh but far from healed. I could feel them studying me just as carefully. "You are the one they speak of," the whisperer said. I didn't answer, just motioned toward the chair. They sat, exhaling in a way that told me they'd been holding their breath for a very long time. As I unwound the cloth from their hand, thread by thread, the truth revealed itself. Flesh torn by something sharp, too sharp to be a tool, too uneven to be a blade used for work. This wound had come from fear, from conflict, from a moment someone desperately wished they could undo. The stranger watched me with eyes I still couldn't see beneath the hood, but I could feel their gaze like a weight. "You will not ask how it happened," they murmured. "No," I whispered back. "My task is only to mend what's in front of me." They breathed out a sound that might have been relief. Or grief. It was hard to tell. I cleaned the wound with warm water, letting the steam rise between us like a veil. I crushed herbs with slow, circular pressure, mixing them with a salve that glowed faintly in the lamplight. My hands moved with that same gentle care I'd given to every person who walked through my door. Slow, deliberate, steady enough to calm the air around us. Outside, the wind brushed softly against the shutters. Inside, only the quiet sound of my breath and theirs filled the room. When I finally wrapped the fresh bandage around their hand, they whispered, "You do not realize how important your craft is." I smiled faintly. No one ever does, not truly. They only feel it when pain fades. The stranger stood, pulling their glove back on with slow, almost ceremonial movements. They stepped toward the door, paused, looked over their shoulder, and whispered, "They will come for you soon." The words hung heavy, like cold air after a warm fire dies. Before I could speak, the stranger slipped into the night, swallowed completely by the silence. I closed the door gently, leaning my forehead against the wood. I could feel the weight of their warning sinking into me, spreading slow and deep like ink in water. The lamp flickered, struggling to stay alive. And in that moment, with the street silent, the night thick, and the air still warm from their presence, I felt something shift. Just a little, just enough to make the hairs on my arms stand up. Not dread, not fear. A sense of arrival. A sense that something had been moving toward me for a long, long time, and was finally close enough to touch. Maybe you can feel it too, drifting at the edges of your imagination, like footsteps just out of sight, like a voice waiting to speak your name. But for now, let that feeling soften, let it fade like a dream sliding gently out of reach. Close your eyes for a moment, breathe in deeply, and let it out slow, as though releasing the weight of an entire day. The night is gentle here. You are safe here. And the story waits quietly, right beside you, ready to open again, whenever you are.